Welcome to the fantasy audiobook, Hokage. Start by prying Hinata away. Chapter 81. Just when Fungin was still glad that he didn't faint completely. The black lines on Shimura Danzo's body, which was buried under heavy rocks in the distance, became clearer and clearer, and then black liquid spewed out from it. The four elephants sealing technique is really dead now. The Hashirama cells in Fungin's chest quickly repaired the cell tears caused by forcibly opening the alarm door. The pain is self-evident. Even so, Fungin could only endure the pain and hide away. Although the two were far apart, he didn't know the specific scope of the four-symbol seal technique. Not long after Fungin retreated, Shimura Danzo's body, buried under heavy rocks, spurted out more ink, and then a transparent black ball exploded. In an instant, the heavy stone covering his body was turned into powder. After just a brief pause, the black ball expanded again. The covered area is several times larger than before. Everything covered by it dissipates instantly and is sealed into the underworld. In just a few seconds, all matter within a diameter of more than 10 meters with Shimura Danzo as the center dissipated instantly. At the same time, Shimura Danzo's body was also sealed into the underworld. Fortunately, the range is not that big. No wonder Sasuke jumped back and dodged it. The pale-faced Fungin looked at the smooth curved section in front of him and sighed with lingering fear. What is that? The ninjas from each village who had been attracted by the movement just now saw the big transparent black ball again, and their hearts suddenly skipped a beat. Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was on the main battlefield, also noticed the strange changes in the distance. Danzo was killed. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked in disbelief. He frowned. He didn't know what was going on over there, but he knew that the four sealing techniques were the sealing techniques that Danzo had already arranged on his body. Once real death is triggered, the sealing technique will be automatically triggered. At this moment, a Kusanagi sword struck straight at him. Hiruzen, hearing the Rui golden cudgel turned from the ape demon king in his hand, he shouted a reminder. Sarutobi Hiruzen reacted instantly and dodged the attack of the Kusanagi sword in front of him in time. Even so, his cheek was still scratched by the Kusanagi sword. Orochimaru licked his tongue and said sadly, "As expected of my teacher, he is still thinking about the situation in the village even if he is in danger." Hiruzen, he is your disciple Orochimaru, don't be careless. The ape demon king who turned into a wishful golden hoop opened one eye and reminded. You're right, old friend. Sarutobi Hiruzen wiped the bloodline from his face with the back of his hand. Then his eyes were no longer confused, and he looked firmly at Orochimaru. I let you go before because of my lack of firmness, but this time I will never forgive your crime again. Orochimaru stuck out his long tongue and said with a gloomy smile, Teacher, are you going to take me seriously? At the same time, Fungin, who had recovered somewhat, found that Omoi, who was supposed to be lying not far away, had disappeared at some point. Did you take advantage of the chaos and escape? Fungin whispered softly. At this moment, a familiar figure of a root member appeared in front of him. How are you still alive? Where is Lord Danzo? His hands were still purple, Aburame asked coldly. Then he assumed a fighting stance. The pale-faced Fungin glanced at him and said lightly, the place where you are standing is the place where the old Biden was lying just now. What did you say? Aburame couldn't understand what Fungin meant. That old Biden is dead. You killed Lord Danzo. Impossible, how could you kill Lord Danzo? Aburame frowned under his sunglasses. How could a being who existed at the same time as Hokage-sama Sarutobi Hiruzen be killed by a genin brat in a few minutes? You're right, I didn't kill him, he committed suicide. After speaking, Fungin turned and left. He tried his best to maintain his body balance so that he would not stagger when he walked. To prevent Aburame from taking root and seeing the abnormality in his body. Stop. Aburame immediately jumped in front of Fungin and blocked his way. He said with a gloomy look, how did you kill Lord Danzo? Hearing what he said, Fungin frowned slightly. I first said I killed him, but you didn't believe it. Now that I say I didn't kill him, you still don't believe it. It's really strange. To prevent the other party from noticing anything unusual, Fungin said calmly, it's very simple, I'm better than him. Then he continued. Danzo is dead, why do you need to do things for him anymore and stop me? Hearing this, Aburame's purple hands trembled slightly. Are you thinking about whether you can successfully hit me with a poisonous insect? Fang'an, who noticed the trembling of his hands, pointed out casually. As long as his momentum does not appear to drop sharply, coupled with the psychological pressure caused by the previous dark technique and fire-style ninjutsu, and now Shimura Danzo's whereabouts are unknown, he is tentatively presumed to be dead. He believed that the Aburame in front of him would not act rashly. The result was just as he expected. After hearing Fang'an's words, Aburame's slightly raised hands stopped shaking and slowly lowered them. He is so calm and composed, and Lord Danzo's whereabouts are unknown, plus the strength he showed before. Could it be that he really killed Lord Danzo? Aburame's heart was trembling. Fang'an did not stay, passed Aburame and left. Aburame struggled for a moment and slowly put on the black gloves. Shimura Danzo's death also means that the roots are about to die. Just because Sarutobi Hiruzen has long abandoned his radical roots. And he needed Shimura Danzo to perform some shady and dark tricks, so he turned a blind eye. Now the leader is gone. The roots are greeted only by the two directions of assimilation into Anbu and death. Go home and see Dad. Aburame murmured in his mouth, then disappeared. To Genbu, many people in the village are just strangers to them. On the other side, Fang'an, who was far away from the main battlefield, relied on Kagura's inner vision to bypass the competing forces and return to his home. Fortunately, his home is not in the main city, so it is usually very quiet, and it is even more so now. Fang'an, who was lying on the bed, raised his right hand high. The two fingers of his right hand are holding the scarlet Sharingan of Uchiha Shisui that has the ability of distinguished heavenly gods. The few Sharingan left in Shimura Danzo's arm are really wasted. Fang'an looked at the scarlet Sharingan in front of him and muttered. Should we just deduct it? Fang'an put his hand on his right eye. After a moment, he chuckled. Forget it, it's scary to think about it. And if he really puts it on, he will wear a bandage all day long, and it will be Shimura Danzo number 2. Any normal person would know that there is something hidden in his right eye, otherwise why would he block it? It's better to put it away first. After Fang'an had repaired most of his body's cells, he put on a black robe and a unique Anbu mask. It would be disrespectful to forbidden technique if we don't take this opportunity to go to the file room and take a look. Hokage house. A man in a black robe and mask sneaked into it in a flash. This person is Fang'an. Sure enough, no one is here. Fang'an whispered in his heart, and then groped all the way inside the Hokage building. It didn't take long before I found the file room in a dimly lit corner. After Fang'an entered the file room, he saw a room that looked like a library. Scrolls of various sizes, large and small, are all arranged neatly. Fang'an briefly browsed through the ninjutsu scrolls on the shelf in front of him. He found that the ninjutsu scrolls here were classified according to ninjutsu types. This is much more convenient. Fang'an browsed all the way and found the purpose of his trip on a shelf in a corner. Konoha has developed various forbidden techniques over the years, from the first generation's creation of Konoha village to today's various forbidden techniques. There are not many scrolls on this shelf, only 2 scrolls. Multiple shadow clone technique. As Fang'an randomly selected a ninjutsu scroll and opened it, the first ninjutsu on it was the multiple shadow clone technique. Is this the sealed book that Naruto stole? I didn't expect it to be put here together. As I flipped through the pages, the next ninjutsu clearly stated reanimation jutsu. A ninjutsu that requires using a living person as a carrier to summon the dead. The body of the summoned dead has the ability to infinitely recover. Further back we see the third jutsu, the tandem paper bombs technique. It is a ninjutsu that uses a single detonating talisman to infinitely cycle and summon a large number of detonating talisman to launch infinite continuous explosions. It is very powerful. When Senju Tobarama developed these 2 ninjutsu, he probably developed them as binding effects. Infinite recovery and super fixed point blasting make it a human-shaped bomb. Fang'an looked at the ninjutsu notes above and muttered to himself. Then I flipped through it, and only the last ninjutsu was left. When he saw the name of the ninjutsu, his eyes lit up. Flying Thunder God Technique. This is a great thing. It's a great tool for traveling. Next time I go to Yuno country and throw it all the way, wouldn't it be like flying on a plane? Compared with the ordinary body flicker technique, the Flying Thunder God technique is equivalent to moving from point A to point B instantly, while the latter uses extremely fast body speed to move from A to B. The two are as different as clouds and mud. After flipping through the sealed book, he became even more curious about another ninjutsu scroll placed next to it. The scroll that can be placed together with the sealed book must be extraordinary. Then he immediately started reading. The moment I opened it, I felt delighted just by seeing the two words, wood style. Wood style 4-pillar house technique, wood style Leonjujia technique, wood style 4-pillar prison technique, wood style big forest technique, wood style silent killing binding technique, wood style wood spindle wall, wood style transmission wood style cutting technique. Wood style wooden golem jutsu. Are they all wood style ninjutsu? Fungin raised his eyebrows. Not to mention whether he can master the subsequent ninjutsu, he must learn the first few wood styles. It is entirely possible to learn how to become a real estate tycoon directly and suppress the housing prices in Konoha. Then Fungin looked at the Hashirama face that disappeared from his chest. Since he started repairing the damaged cells in his body, there is no trace of the Hashirama cells in his body, but he can still feel that the Hashirama cells are in his body. Take this opportunity to give it a try. Wood style 4-pillar prison technique. Fungin began to guide the movement of the chakra in his body according to the seals on the scroll. After several attempts, directly in front of Fungin appeared a square cube that was only half a meter high and resembled a mini prison. After mastering it, can I still control the size of the 4-pillar prison technique according to the user's thoughts and the amount of chakra? Fungin looked at the notes under the ninjutsu. Using wood style successfully, it seems that the Hashirama cells in my body have changed from a dominant gene to a recessive gene. Fungin was a little happy about this. Originally, he was a little uncomfortable looking at Hashirama's face that might appear on his chest, especially when taking a shower. It always felt weird, but now that it has dissipated, it made him feel much better. I wonder how the battle between Sarutobi Hiruzen and Orochimaru is going. Let's take a look at the medical ninjutsu. Fungin stretched and walked to other shelves. Compared with the sealed book, the remaining scrolls are very small. Basically, one scroll records 1 to 2 ninjutsu, or even only 1. After spending a long time looking through it, I found a scroll recording medical ninjutsu. After opening the scroll, 3 large characters were written on it, healing jutsu. Inject chakra from the palm of your hand, and use the power of chakra to treat physical injuries. Fungin pondered slightly and stuffed the scroll into his bag. Although his Hashirama cells and the powerful recovery ability of Uzumaki lineage can already achieve more exaggerated therapeutic effects than healing jutsu, the latter is better than healing jutsu in that it can heal others. However, Fungin's Hashirama cells and the powerful recovery ability of Uzumaki's lineage can only heal his own body. Then Fungin briefly browsed through other ninjutsu. Basically, they are all ordinary C-level, D-level ninjutsu and B-level ninjutsu. The battle between Sarutobi Hiruzen and Orochimaru should be coming to an end, right? Fungin thought like this, and then took away the sealed book and another scroll full of wood-style ninjutsu. When I walked to the door, I thought for a moment, then grabbed a few scrolls and put them in my bag. It wasn't until he couldn't hold it anymore that he left with satisfaction. Just as he left the file room, he sensed that there seemed to be other people in the Hokage building, and they were heading in his direction. Will anyone be here at this time? Fungin hurriedly used the transformation technique to turn into a tiny gravel, and at the same time opened Kagura's hard eye to hide his chakra aura. Pat pat pat. The sparse footsteps became more and more obvious. When the owner of the footsteps approached, Fungin recognized him at a glance. Udatane Kaharu. Why is she here? Not only is she a high-level advisor to Konoha, she is also a disciple of Senju Tobarama. Now that such a large-scale battle is taking place in Konoha, she actually appears here instead of helping. This made Fungin feel incredible. Before Udatane Kaharu took out the key, he saw a gap in the door. Then gave it a gentle push. With a creak, the door opened easily. Unlocked, she raised her eyebrows and walked in. After seeing Udatane Kaharu enter, Fungin immediately changed back to his original form, and left outside the Hokage building in a flash. After walking a few steps into the room, Udatane Kaharu saw scrolls swaying on the shelves. Is this stolen? Realizing that something was wrong, Udatane Kaharu hurried to the innermost shelf. Then he saw that the shelves of Forbidden Technique were empty, and the sealed book and another wood-style scroll stored inside had all disappeared. Is it still too late? Another gray-haired old man walked outside the door, also Mitokado Homura, one of Konoha's top advisors. When the village is in a fierce battle, who will steal the forbidden technique? That's by Kabuto, Orochimaru's instructions. Fungin left the Hokage building and ran towards home. After a while, I returned home. Fungin eagerly took out the Book of Seals and turned to the last chapter of Flying Thunder God Technique. So that's how it is, wonderful. The more he watched, the more immersed he became. Interest is the best teacher, this sentence is true. Why did he sleep when he was in ninja school? It's not that the E-level ninjutsu taught is too boring. If Naruto is asked to teach you about seduction techniques, make sure he is full of energy, studies hard, and is positive. After some practice and pondering, Fungin mastered the Flying Thunder God technique. He couldn't wait to put the Flying Thunder God's mark on his home. Then he ran outside the door, used his perception ability to sense the existence of the Flying Thunder God mark, and then triggered the Flying Thunder God technique. Base. In an instant, Fungin appeared outside the door and inside the house. Although the prerequisite is to sense where the mark is before it can be activated, this is still when he is not proficient. Once you master the ability to greatly shorten the time of sensing the mark, coupled with the extreme range of Kagura's heart eye, it is simply a teleportation skill. Now I have become a super monster. The corners of Fungin's mouth rose crazily, and he couldn't suppress it no matter how hard he pressed it. It was even harder than AK. Ha, ha. Fungin kept hesitating to calm down his excitement. Then he took out an unused seal scroll. Seal these scrolls into the sealing scroll again, which will make it much easier to carry. Fungin, who originally wanted to take a nap, had no intention of sleeping now. He tidied up briefly, put on his usual clothes, and wandered around the village. It would be much more convenient for him to place the mark when no one was around. Ichiraku Ramen, mark. Akamaiki Yakiniku, mark. Shopping Street, mark. The bathhouse, is also marked. He marked the places he frequented with the Flying Thunder God mark because the Flying Thunder God mark would never disappear, and he never tired of it. Ha ha ha, brothers, I found it. A sand shinobi pointed at Fungin dozens of meters away and shouted excitedly. After he shouted, a group of Sunagaku ninjas appeared in an instant, at least a dozen of them. You are really human. I thought I would have to do nothing until the end of the plan. After searching for so long in the village, I finally saw a figure, even though it was a little kid. Burning, killing and looting, now we have only completed the first one, so we can use him to complete the second one. A group of sand shinobi chattered without hesitation. Fungin didn't even look at them. After placing the Flying Thunder God mark on the side, he headed to the next street. At this moment, the tall sand shinobi jumped in front of Fungin and blocked his way. What are you doing here, kid? Tell me, where are the others? And where is your mother? Call her out, silly boy. Fungin raised his eyes and looked at the ninja who spoke, and spoke the quintessence of the nation. Although the man who just spoke didn't understand it, he understood the word, silly, and he immediately guessed that it was definitely not a good word. You little brat. His face turned red with anger and he stretched out his big hand and shouted. I have to give a big mouth to the kid who can't understand the situation in front of me. Snapped. Click. The crisp sound of the slap was accompanied by a dull click sound. All sand shinobi's eyes widened and their breathing stopped. Because the slap was not from the man to the kid, but from the kid on the man's face. The man's hands were still raised in the air, and his head was rotated at least 720 degrees. Quiet. The sand shinobi surrounding Fungin were very quiet at this time. The sound of breathing stopped. They didn't even see clearly when the kid slapped him. They only heard a crisp sound and saw the man's head turning several times. Let that kid go. Suddenly, a female voice sounded. Then several kunai flew in, directly piercing into the surrounding sand shinobi who were frozen in place. Run. One of the sand shinobi saw his dead companion next to him and was the first to break through the inexplicable fear. With his shout, the frightened eyes of the other sand shinobi also regained some clarity. Quickly spread out in all directions. Am I so scary? The purple-haired masked woman who made the noise just now whispered. Those sand shinobi who scattered and fled were caught up by faster figures before they could run too far. A cold light flashed. More than a dozen sand shinobi were killed by the figure behind them before they could run 50 meters. Are you okay? The purple-haired woman who just spoke fell in front of Feng An, leaned down with her hands on her knees, and spoke softly. Feng An glanced at her. Even though she was wearing a mask, she roughly guessed her identity. Mao Yu Sunset. The purple-haired Anbu member could only think of her. Although he is also an Anbu, only Sarutobi Hiruzen and Shang know about it. The others who know his identity are also dead, such as Shimura Danzo's uncle. Feng An shook his head slightly. Thank you, I'm fine. When he turned around and was about to leave, Mao Yuxian moved in front of him. Are you looking for your mother now? The village is very dangerous now. Can my sister take you to a shelter? Feng An silently took out the Konoha forehead protector. Actually, I'm a ninja too. Seeing the Konoha forehead protector that Feng An took out, Uoyuki Xian under the mask was slightly startled. It is rare for someone at such a young age to know how to do his or her best for the village when the village is in crisis. She sighed slightly inwardly. Soon, she curled her lips and said with a smile, Sister, I know, you are also a ninja of Konoha, but it is really dangerous now. Quote. Feng An was silent. Okay, let's go with my sister. Seeing Feng An's silent look, Mao Yuxian picked up Feng An and jumped off the roof without saying a word. Feng An, who was suddenly picked up, was a little stunned. Actually, I'm also very fast. Is he shy? Under the mask, Yuxian chuckled. Sister, I know, you are also very fast. Hearing Feng An's words, Mao Yuxian fell in love with this child even more. Some of the children she escorted before were crying and making noise that made her head spin. Quote. Feng An fell silent again. Why do these people like to judge people by their appearance? Just because I don't look ferocious enough, everyone subconsciously thinks I'm weak. Aren't I just a little fairer, a little handsome, and a little cute? He originally planned to march all the way to Hyuga's mansion, but now his plan was forcibly changed by Azuki Yugao. Feng An, who was held in Mao Yuxian's arms, sighed slightly. Sure enough, good-looking people always walk on the road of being misunderstood. After a period of time, Uoyuki Xian carried Feng An to a large shelter open near Hokage Rock. From the outside, ordinary people would not be able to tell that there was a mystery hidden here. Feng An, who was being held, said, Can you let me down? Good. Mao Yuxian gently placed him at the entrance of the cave, smiled and rubbed his little head. Then you go in, sister is gone. After speaking, she flashed and jumped away again. Feng An looked at Mao Yuxi who was going away and his face turned pale, and then he also put the Flying Thunder God mark on the entrance of the cave. I wonder if the mark can be sensed from such a long distance. Feng An closed his eyes and opened Kagura's inner eye, and he sensed all abnormalities within 1 kilometer. But it's not enough. It's at least 5 kilometers away from the previous location. Feng An once again expands the scope of God-tier music. 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers. In the blink of an eye, it expanded to a range of 10 kilometers. It is no longer possible to expand Kagura's inner vision further. To be precise, it should be meaningless. At the edge of the 10-kilometer range, the information captured by his perception is extremely blurry. Even if he delivers chakra again and expands the range, he will only perceive a blur. The area of 10 kilometers in diameter is also extremely large, enough to cover the entire main urban area of Konoha village. Has Sarutobi Hiruzen started a tug-of-war with Orochimaru? Feng An murmured to himself with his eyes closed. At the same time, he also vaguely sensed Naruto, Sakura and Parker chasing Uchiha Sasuke outside the main city of Konoha village. Aburame Shino didn't notice what he cared about. Most likely, he has already caught up with Sasuke and is fighting Kankuro. At the same time, he also sensed what Hinata was doing. At this time, she is staying at the Hyuga mansion with Hyuga Hanabi. Seeing that everyone was in good condition, Feng An stopped worrying and immediately locked on the Flying Thunder God's mark. Flying Thunder God technique. Then Feng An appeared at home instantly. He silently felt the amount of chakra he had just consumed, which was about 3% of his energy. I can use the ultra-long-range Flying Thunder God technique at least 30 times in a short period of time. If it were teleported over short distances in battle, wouldn't it be easy to do it hundreds of times? Feng An was a little excited. This is without counting the speed of Hashirama Cell's chakra recovery. If counted, the Flying Thunder God technique can actually be used thousands of times in combat. So scary. Then Feng washed his face, took out a kunai and carved the mark of Flying Thunder God technique on it. The rush artifact is completed. He closed his eyes again and opened Kagura's inner eye. Feng sensed the familiar chakra. Yamanaka wind. Underground. He just clearly captured the chakra of the Yamanaka wind coming from somewhere underground. Is it the underground base of the root organization? When Feng sensed Yamanaka Feng's chakra again, it disappeared. It must be that some kind of ninjutsu has blocked my perception. Feng muttered to himself with his eyes closed. Just when he locked onto the Flying Thunder God mark and prepared to use the Flying Thunder God technique, he once again sensed a familiar chakra appearing in the place where the Yamanaka wind disappeared just now. Mao Yuxian. In the blink of an eye, her chakra aura also disappeared. Is she following the Yamanaka wind? Feng frowned slightly. This development seems to have deviated from the original plot, but when Feng participated in the main plot, it may have already produced a butterfly effect. Should I go take a look? Feng hesitated. It would definitely be dangerous for Mao Yuxian to lurk in the root organization base alone, but the other party only had a casual acquaintance with him. On the other side, the Hyuga mansion. Hyuga Hinata and Hyuga Hanabi both hugged the thighs. Hyuga Hanabi tilted her round little face and looked at Hinata, who had uneasiness written on her face. Sister, are you worried about that red-haired guy? Hinata put her little face on her knees and nodded slightly. Well, his name is Feng. Hanabi pouted. I know, my sister has said it almost 100 times. Then why didn't you call him by his name? HMPH, I can delete the word, bad guy, now, and I'm already very friendly to him. Originally, my sister's love only belonged to me, but he took away most of it when he came, leaving me with only a little bit. Hinata whispered. Why are you taking away my sister? What are you thinking about in your little head every day? The book says this. Once a strange boy appears next to my sister, it means a crisis is coming. My sister will lose a large part of her love. What book are you reading? Hyuga Hanabi put his finger on the small mouth and fiddled with it a few times and said. The Shy Sister and the Cute Sister, the top 10 sweet things that my sister and I cannot talk about, and what else, that's what the book says anyway. Quote. Hinata was silent for a while, then slowly said, when Sister Sha comes back, I want her to confiscate all your books. No, you can't. Otherwise, I have to tell my father and let him take it away. I have to say something in the passionate love you are watching. Before Hyuga Hanabi could finish speaking, Hinata stopped her with a blushing face. You, how did you know? Hyuga Hanabi said with a smile. Hee, the book says that you should pay attention to all your sister's hobbies. Underground, the root organization's secret base. The wind of Yamanaka is in front, and the moon and sunset are behind. After seeing Yamanaka sneaking into a heavy iron door, Azuki Shion also entered quietly. However, as soon as she entered, Yamanaka jumped down from the ceiling and pressed a kunai against her lower back. With his excellent sense of wind, Yamanaka sensed the tail following him early. Don't move, why are you following me? Mao Yuxian took a step slower in drawing the knife, and then lowered her arm. I'm just curious, as Anbu, why didn't you go to aid the village instead of coming underground? HMPH, stop pretending. As an Anbu directly under the Hokage, how could you not know that I am a root member of Lord Danzo? Yamanaka Feng exposed her lies straightforwardly. He continued. Tell me the purpose of following you here, otherwise you will die here. After hearing the other party's words, Ueyu Xian understood that if she didn't give him a satisfactory answer, she would probably die. Master Hokage has reminded us to pay attention to Anbu, who is always around Danzo, that is, the roots that should have been disbanded. We happened to bump into him this time, so I naturally wanted to investigate. It's that simple. Yes. Yamanaka's eyebrows knitted together. He had learned the news of Shimura Danzo's death from Abarame's mouth. As a result, now he doesn't know what to do with the woman in front of him. If Shimura Danzo's normal temperament was normal, he would not ask so many questions, but would just kill him directly. Just when he was hesitating, Azuki Shion seized the opportunity, suddenly took out the kunai and paddled backwards. Clang! The two kunai collided together and made a sharp sound. Then Uoyuki Shion drew out the samurai sword from behind. Dance of the Three Suns and Moons. 3 identical figures appeared in an instant, holding katana swords and attacking Yamanaka Fung from 3 directions at the same time. Oops. At this time, it was too late for Yamanaka Fung to draw out the katana behind him, the opponent was too fast. At the critical moment, 3 brown square wooden pillars drilled out from the gaps in the heavy iron door. He quickly passed by Yamanaka Fung and thrust towards the 3 figures of Azuki Yugao. Boom, boom, 2 shadow clones were instantly pierced through the body, and then the 2 wooden pillars circled directly without any stagnation, locking Azuki Shion in the air. Uoyu Shion's expression suddenly changed as her whole body was tightly entangled with wooden pillars. Wood-style ninjutsu. Are you okay, Fung? Yamanaka Fang shook his head and said, it's okay. Then the heavy iron door was pushed open, and a group of masked ninjas walked in. Without exception, they are all root members cultivated by Shimura Danzo. The one who just used wood style was the long-haired masked man codenamed Atenzo. After walking in, without saying a word, he used wood style ninjutsu again on Azuki Shion. Wood style wood spindle wall. Several thick logs instantly emerged from the ground and wrapped Azuki Shion in them. Let's wait until Lord Danzo comes back to make a decision. Subsequently, Tenzo and Yamanaka Fang and other root members came outside the iron gate. Wind, where is Lord Danzo? Yamanaka Fung said with some hesitation. Danzo-sama seems to have been killed. What? Several root members present were filled with murderous intent. The expression on Tianzang's mask was also moving. Fung, what's going on? Didn't you and Togen go to help Mr. Danzo's nephew? What happened? Yamanaka Fang nodded. Yes, originally we all thought that we were just facing a kid, and as usual, we could solve it without us taking action. But, in the end, Lord Danzo died at the hands of a red-haired boy. Seeing Yamanaka's hesitant words, the root members behind Tenzo urged anxiously, tell me the details. Good. Quote. After spending a few minutes, Yamanaka Fang told everyone in detail what happened and how he confirmed that Danzo was dead. After hearing this, everyone was silent for a moment. One of the root members asked weakly, then, where is Lord Danzo's body? Tianzang spoke slowly. In the 4 symbols sealing technique, the body was probably sealed to the underworld. The 4 elephants sealing technique. It's a sealing technique carved on Danzo-sama's body that will be triggered once he dies. Tianzang said somewhat weakly. Then, Master Danzo has really. Everyone fell silent again. Suddenly the words of one of them broke the silence. Then what do we do now? After hearing his question, everyone looked lonely. They joined the roots since childhood and were trained as emotionless killing tools, but how could people have no emotions at all? Having no feelings is just relative to strangers, killing decisively. But now that without a backbone like Shimura Danzo, they don't know what to do in the future, and they can't find the value of their existence. Let's kill that brat. I agree. You go ahead, I'm going home. Since Danzo is dead, what's the point of doing this? Everyone has their own ideas. There were originally dozens of figures, but after a few scattered people left, there were now only 7 people left. Tenzo, how should we deal with that Anbu? Kill her. If Lord Danzo is here, he will kill her directly. After losing the backbone, they will subconsciously attach themselves to people who are stronger than themselves. The most powerful among these people is Tenzo, who masters wood-style ninjutsu, so he is naturally regarded as the one giving orders. Tianzang pondered for a moment and shook his head. No, Lord Danzo can be unscrupulous, but not now. In the future, our roots will either be liquidated, or we will be assimilated with Anbu. If people know that we have killed Anbu members, the only way left is to liquidate. Seeing that everyone was silent and still thinking about the pros and cons, Yamanaka Fung stood next to Tenzo and said, I recognize Tenzo's decision. At this moment, Yamanaka Fung suddenly frowned. He felt that someone was coming down from the ground. Everyone, someone is here. Anyone else? The remaining 7 people present quickly took out their kunai, hid in the corner, and prepared for assassination. Why is there no one here? The visitor landed on the iron passage and scratched his head. It's him. Yamanaka Fung, who was hiding in the dark, saw the visitor's iconic red hair and instantly recognized it as Fung En. The others saw Fung En's red hair, turned to look at Yamanaka Fang and asked, "Is he the murderer of Lord Danzo?" Yamanaka Fang nodded. "Yes, that's him. Why did he come here?" Just as the Yamanaka wind was sighing slightly, someone lurked among the people on the other side and rushed forward in a flash. Not good. By the time it was noticed, the Yamanaka wind was too late to stop it. I saw the burly man jumping out holding a kunai and stabbing Fungin hard. What? An ordinary brat, just as he breathed a sigh of relief. Bang! Fungin, who was stabbed, turned into smoke. Shadow clone. Where is the body? The burly man's eyes widened, and the kunai stood in front of him and hurriedly glanced around. Bang! Just when he was looking for Fungin's figure, Fungin fell from above and trampled him to the ground. It made a loud noise as it hit the pig iron. The root base built underground was very quiet. This sudden loud noise filled the underground base and echoed in everyone's ears. Leopard. With an angry shout, the remaining two people lurking on the other side jumped out angrily and attacked Fungin. The four people lurking on his side already knew that the other party was the murderer of Danzo, but the three people on the other side did not. Come back. He is the murderer of Lord Danzo. Yamanaka Fung shouted loudly to stop. Hearing that Fungin was the murderer of Danzo, the two genmen became even more irrational. One took out the short sword from behind, and the other held the katana in both hands and slashed away together. Wood-style wood spindle wall. As the two of them rushed forward, several thick trees grew out from under their feet and wrapped around their bodies, forcing the two of them back. Wood-style, Yamato. Fungin saw the man releasing the ninjutsu and made a judgment in his heart. The two root members who were rescued by Tianzang were a little angry. Tenzo, what are you doing? Didn't we agree to avenge Lord Danzo? Were you able to beat him? Did you die in vain? Another root member next to Tenzo said. Calm down. Tianzang released the shackles of the wooden ingot wall and stared at Fungin, who was stepping on the burly man in front of him. Ah! The root member named Leopard yelled angrily when he was stepped on the ground, and quickly slashed his kunai towards his back. Fungin stepped on his arm and broke it. Give it back to you. Before he could scream in pain, Fungin stood behind him and kicked him hard. Boom! The man's ribs were instantly broken and he flew heavily in the direction of Tenzo and others. Seeing this, Tianzang jumped up suddenly and caught the man to prevent him from hitting the iron door behind him and causing secondary damage. Mao Yuxian, who was firmly controlled by the wooden wall inside the iron gate, naturally heard the noise coming from outside. Who is outside? Have other Anbu discovered this place too? Mao Yuxian's beautiful eyebrows furrowed. Her hands and feet were entangled in the wood, and she couldn't move at all. She could only hear the movement outside, but couldn't do anything. Outside the iron gate, Fungin faced off with 7 root members. Let go of that purple-haired Anbu. As he was speaking, suddenly Yamanaka Fung threw something towards Fungin from the other side. Fungin's perception caught him instantly, and he dodged sideways. Huh, what is this? Fungin took a closer look, and his consciousness was sucked in for a moment. Heart-turning puppet seal technique. Fungin's head sank, and after a moment of trance, he found that his consciousness had entered the scarecrow. At this time, he was standing outside, his body already controlled by the consciousness of Yamanaka Fung. Tenzo holds the unconscious Yamanaka case. A root member nearby asked, did it succeed? Yamanaka wind control Fungin nodded in response. Fungin glanced sideways at the scarecrow and chuckled. No matter how strong you are, you must not have thought that my ninjutsu can invade your consciousness, right? Fungin's consciousness in the scarecrow did not fluctuate at all, and he just looked at him calmly. Okay, now we can avenge Lord Danzo. Fung, kill him quickly. Several root members looked happy. However, Fungin shook his head. No, I won't do that. What happened? Fung failed. The root members around him turned to look at Yamanaka Fung. Seeing Yamanaka Fung still lying quietly on Tenzo's shoulder, he understood that it was Yamanaka Fung himself who just said the words. What are you thinking? Master Danzo was killed by him. Tenzo didn't interrupt from beginning to end, he just looked directly at Yamanaka Fung. Kill him, so what? Lord Danzo is already dead, and is Lord Danzo really nice to us? What do you mean? Lord Danzo just died, are you going to deny Lord Danzo? Fungin shook his head. I'm not denying Mr. Danzo. I'm very grateful to him for allowing me to understand the value of my existence at the root, but the ideas he instilled in us are incorrect. If we really follow Lord Danzo's philosophy, there will be no feelings between us, and the idea of revenge will never arise. One of the men at the root asked, then let's just let it go. Killing him will only cause more trouble. Could it be that if Lord Danzo dies, we will no longer be alive? And assimilation with Anbu. Tianzang is right. Our way back is to assimilate. If we don't want to, we can only do other things in life. Hearing this, everyone had different expressions behind their masks. They subconsciously clenched their fists. Your name is Feng'an, right? Yamanaka Feng controlled Feng'an's body and turned to look at the scarecrow. A genius like you shouldn't die like this, but you are also very dangerous. One of them clenched his teeth and asked, is this the right thing to do? Whether the mission they did was right or wrong was judged by Shimura Danzo's thoughts. Now it was up to them to decide, and they didn't know what to do. Tianzang on the side has been silent, his heart has already begun to waver. Without her, I wouldn't even have the name Tenzo now, would I? Single quote. Tenzo was thinking about a girl named Yukimi with a smile on his lips. Just when Yamanaka Feng controlled Feng'an's body and left on the ground, a figure fell down. Won't you kill me? After Yamanaka Feng saw the face of the fallen figure clearly, his pupils tightened. I'm possessed by a shadow clone. Boom. Feng'an disappeared, and Yamanaka Feng's consciousness returned to his body. Excluding the burly man who fell into a coma, the remaining 6 root members once again took a fighting stance. Yamanaka took 2 deep breaths and said, why couldn't I feel your presence before? Why tell you? Feng'an just used Kagura's hard eye to hide his chakra aura. And today's Feng'an is still not the original body. With multiple shadow clone techniques, he only needs to use shadow clone to come down, and he can open Kagura's mind eyes on it, 100% safe. Without complete certainty, he would not expose himself to danger. Tianzang, who had been silent all this time, said, are you here to eradicate the weeds? I'm not a person like you. If you let that purple-haired Anbu go, I will leave. Feng'an responded. Feng'an naturally sensed that Mao Yuxian was firmly locked in the iron door by wood style. Good. From the beginning, he had no intention of doing anything to Luo Yuqixian. Now that the two of them had the same goal, Tenzang formed the seal neatly. Inside the iron gate, the wooden walls that sealed Mao Yuxian scattered, and then the wood that entangled her arms and legs dispersed after she put her on the ground. What's going on? That guy was knocked down. Luo Yuqixian, holding a samurai sword in hand, quietly leaned in the gap of the iron door and looked out. That kid. Her beautiful eyes flashed, and she suddenly pushed open the iron door. Is it really him? Mao Yuxian couldn't help but ask, why are you here? Save you. Save me. How can you, a kid, save me? Feng'an rolled his eyes at her and said helplessly, I told you that I am a ninja. Leave, Tianzang said next to him. The bright katana in Luo Yuqixian's hand stood in front of her, guarding against Tenzo. Just let me go like this. I will report the truth to Lord Hokage when I get back. Just now she saw several petri dishes 2 to 3 meters high placed in the corner of the iron gate. It was obviously evidence that Shimura Danzo had not given up on the inhumane experiments. We are just trying to save our lives. If you don't leave, the child you just pointed out may go on a killing spree. You mean him? Mao Yuxian pointed at Feng'an, suspecting that her ears heard wrongly. Tenzo nodded. Although Mao Yuxian was still skeptical, since the other party let her go, she would not be stupid enough to ask for more information. Then while staring at the 7 people, he retreated in the direction of Feng'an. After retreating to Feng'an, no one had any intention of taking action, so she put away her katana. Then he decisively picked up Feng'an and rushed to the ground. Are you addicted to hugging me? I seriously suspect that she took advantage of me because I looked handsome and cute. As soon as he reached the ground, before Mao Yuxian could say anything, there was a bang. Feng'an exploded in her arms. Just when she was confused, Feng'an released Kagura's inner eye and walked out. It's just a shadow clone. Shadow clone. Mao Yuxian never expected that Feng'an just now was actually a shadow clone. I was saved by the kid I saved. Her mind was in a state of confusion at this time. Who the hell are you? Just think you are asking me my name. My name is Feng'an. Feng'an, never heard of it, Mao Yuxian whispered. And aren't you in the shelter? Why did you show up here? And how did you convince them? You can use the shadow clone technique at a young age. Do you want to join Anbu? A series of questions were thrown out. Feng'an pressed his temple. I kind of understand Shikamaru. Single quote. You saved me once, and now I'll give it back to you again. Don't ask me, just go and do your thing. I'm leaving. Hey, wait. Without hearing what she had to say, Feng'an used the Flying Thunder God technique and disappeared directly. A confused face was left behind. No, just disappeared. Time and space ninjutsu. Root's underground base. One Root member asked, what do we do? Tenzo was silent for a moment and said, according to Lord Danzo's last request, go save the village. If you still have relatives, please go home and see. Several Roots beside him sighed. Hey, where is my family? I have never seen my parents. It has been more than 10 years, and I have forgotten my original name. Your code name is Chen, why not just call it Chen? That's fine, unlike my code name of C. Haha, then your name is Bingzi, right? There's no man with a belt on his back, so why don't you call me Tatsuko? Leopard, who was lying on the ground, clutched his belly, got up with difficulty, and interjected, they sound like two lovely girls. Are you okay, Leopard? Haha, Leopard, everyone has not been so happy for a long time. Their missions are always filled with blood and death. The last time they were so happy was when Danzo asked them to train together many years ago. Listening to everyone's laughter, Yamanaka lowered his head and said nothing. No one else present had family, but he did. He understood that Tianzang's last words were meant for him. He looked embarrassed and clenched his fists again and again. On the other side, Feng'an opened Kagura's inner eye to perceive the changes in the village. On the edge of Konoha village, the three-headed snake that came out of Sunagakur summoning has been killed by Jiraiya's big toad. Inside the village, Yamanaka Haiichi, Nara Shikaku, Akamaiki Dingza, Inazukazuma, Hyuga Hiyashi, Aburame Shiwei and others all let go of their hands and feet to crush Sand Shinobi and Odo Nin mercilessly after the villagers took refuge. The tug of war between Sarutobi Hiruzen and Orochimaru on the main battlefield is also coming to an end. Have you reached your limit? Then take away all your ninjutsu. Sarutobi Hiruzen shouted. Seal. Behind him, Shinigami, who was summoned by the Seal of Ghouls, slashed at the part of the soul that was pulled out. As Shinigami swallowed the souls in Orochimaru's hands were incomplete, and his arms instantly dropped. Immortal, my hand, my hand. Orochimaru, who couldn't feel his hands, looked extremely ferocious and roared at the dying Sarutobi Hiruzen. Sarutobi Hiruzen had a slight smile on his lips. Although I regret that I can't take you with me, I will wait for you in that world, my disciple. Thump. Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was dying, fell on his back. The ape demon lying on the ground next to him had an angry look on his face. Ape. Boom. A burst of white smoke rose, and the ape demon disappeared. It also means that Sarutobi Hiruzen's oil lamp has burned out. My hands. My jutsu. Orochimaru breathed rapidly and looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen lying on the ground with hatred. Hokage-sama. Shang and other Anbu members outside the Four Purple Flame formation couldn't believe the scene in front of them. Lord Hokage died in battle. Orochimaru. That's your sensei. Several of the Anbu members cursed angrily. Orochimaru gritted his teeth, remained silent for a moment and whispered, let's go, the plan is over. Yes. The four purple flame formations of Jirobo, Tayuya, Kitamura, and the four sound ninjas on the left and right were maintained around them. For a moment, Tayuya and Jirobo supported Orochimaru and jumped into the air. Want to run. Shang and others also suddenly jumped into the sky to catch up. Ninjutsu, spider binding technique. At this time, Kitamura on the side suddenly sprayed a large spider web from his mouth, entangling Shang and others. Then he followed Orochimaru and others and escaped together. These spider silks are so sticky. Feng'an, who had been sensing the situation here with Kagura's hard eyes on the other side, muttered to himself after sensing that the Sarutobi Hiruzen chakra was gradually extinguished, is he already dead? In the forest outside Konoha village, One-Tail Shukaku fell into a deep sleep as Naruto awakened Gaara with a rocket headbutt. This plan to destroy Konoha has failed. In the circular venue for the third exam, After seeing Orochimaru escape and the Konoha shinobi's counterattack, Baki and Yakushi Kabuto no longer lingered, throwing out smoke bombs and escaping from Kakashi and Might Guy. Ultimately, the battle ended with Tsunagaku's defeat. After the total armistice, Konoha village began repair and reconstruction projects. Two Konoha consultants approached Jiraiya, who was gathering information. Mitokado Homura, are you still doing such boring things? Well, this is considered drawing materials and creating. Jiraiya calmly put away the telescope in his hand. What do the two consultants want from me? I think you can understand why we came to you without us having to tell you. The negotiations with Tsunagaku are over, right? Mitokado Homura nodded. Sand Shinobi declared that everything happened because of Orochimaru, and at the same time fully surrendered to Konoha village. In order to rebuild and restore the strength of the village, they had to agree to Tsunagaku's full surrender. Now, the village's strength is very weak and it must be prepared to deal with greater crises that may occur. It is unknown when other neighboring countries will launch another attack. Quote. Jiraiya scratched his hair, took out his binoculars and turned to look at the bathhouse. There's no need to tell me this kind of thing. I'm going to continue collecting information. Udatane Kaharu took a step forward and said, what is needed most now is a leader who can stabilize the people and gather people's hearts, that is, the fifth Hokage. During the emergency meeting yesterday with the daimyos of the Fire Country, we finally decided to choose you. Jiraiya refused. I'm not that material. Tsunade is more suitable than me, right? She can, but no one knows her whereabouts. I'm responsible for getting Tsunade back. Mitokado Homura lowered his head slightly and thought for a moment. He said, okay, then as the Tsunade search team, we will send 3 Anbu to you. Jiraiya turned to look at Mitokado Homura and the two, and said calmly, don't worry, I won't escape, there is no need to send someone to monitor me. After speaking, Jiraiya walked away. 2 Anbu asked in the darkness, should we follow? No need, he already said that, not to mention he is one of the legendary Sannin. Can you make sure not to be noticed by him? Inside the large meeting room of the Hyuga clan. In the front direction of the conference room are the first elder and second elder of the Hyuga clan. Most members of the Hyuga clan are present at the scene, taking the clan house and branch house as the criterion. The clan house is on the left and the branch house is on the right. The Hyuga clan members all looked serious and sat with their upper bodies straight and kneeling. Hyuga Hiyashi, Hyuga Hinata and Hyuga Neji are also among them. After the great elder looked around at everyone, he said loudly and forcefully, there are only 2 things to do in the family meeting today. First, the village needs our manpower for the subsequent reconstruction work of the village. 2. The great elder glanced sideways at Hyuga Hiyashi. As for the successor of the clan, it will be announced by the Hiyashi clan leader himself today. Hyuga Hiyashi's face changed instantly, veins popped out in his hands on his legs, and soon purple appeared on his thighs. He didn't expect that the great elder would directly declare this. Such behavior made him furious. Hinata, who was sitting on her knees, took off her usual clothes and wore the kimono of the Hyuga clan. She noticed that her father was in a bad mood and grabbed her father's hand worriedly. Those who heard the great elder's words also looked sideways at Hyuga Hiyashi and Hyuga Hinata. Why didn't you see the patriarch's little daughter? You should be planning to make your eldest daughter the heir, right? No way, the patriarch has obviously given up on his eldest daughter, so the younger daughter must be the heir. Hyuga Neji, who was sitting in the branch house queue, looked straight at Hyuga Hiyashi, wondering what he was thinking. Quiet. After hearing the great elder's words, the chattering voice disappeared instantly. Now let's talk about the first thing. Is there anyone who wants to help Konoha village? Everyone looked at me and I looked at you, but no one expressed their opinions. On the other side, Fungin felt how spacious and bright his rebuilt apartment was. He spent some time learning and applying wood-style 4-pillar house technique and wood-style Leonjujia technique. Finally, using the modern house style, he rebuilt his small dilapidated house into an apartment-like 3-bedroom and 1 living room with 2 floors and a skylight at the top so that he could watch the stars while sleeping at night. The only regret he had was that he couldn't get the tile material, so the overall style was still retro log style. But it already looks very unique among Konoha village. In particular, most of the houses in the main urban area of the village were destroyed to a state of disgrace. Before they were completely rebuilt, he was asked to build a second-floor apartment on the outskirts of the village. It feels like the air has become fresher. Is this what it feels like to live in a big house? After admiring his achievements, Fungin entered the bedroom and threw himself on his bed with his eyes closed. Crunch. Instead of the soft and crumbling bed he imagined, the hard wooden bed made him feel uncomfortable all over. When he turned over, the wooden bed made a creaking sound. I thought it was nothing before, but now it seems out of place in my 200 square meter apartment. The whole big soft bed will work another day. Just when Fungin was about to take a rest, chatter came from outside. Hey, Tian Wei, are you here too? Haha, after I came out of this shelter, I found that the walls of my house were gone, so I just came out to relax. But what do you think of this house? I remember there wasn't such a big apartment here before. Yeah, I don't remember anyone living here either. Look at how new it is. It was probably built in just these 2 days. It's so rich, maybe some nobles came here to live here, right? Hearing the noise outside, Fungin, who was lying on the bed, raised his head depressedly. Why is it so noisy? After Fungin opened the door and went out. Only then did he realize that a group of women were discussing his sudden appearance of a big house outside. Fungin took a casual glance and saw an acquaintance. He waved to the woman named Tian Wei. Hello, Aunt Tian Wei. Are you Fungin? The woman named Tian Wei looked at the red-haired boy who came out of the apartment with a shocked face. Wow, do you know the owner of this house? Introduce us to each other. Hearing the booing from several women around him, Tian Wei smiled coquettishly, looking a little embarrassed. A month or 2 ago, I was discussing with other neighbors on the street that this red-haired boy was ignorant and wasted his years. The results of it, now that their house has just been destroyed, a large house with an area of 200 square meters has been renovated. Tian Wei buried her head and waved her hand. I just met a few times before. Hey, Tian Wei, you are not interesting enough. You know the nobles and don't introduce them to us. One of the women turned to look at Fungin and said with a smile, Children, from now on we will all belong to our neighbors. We will often move around. Another woman echoed, Are your adults here? Ask your adults to come out and chat too. When Tian Wei heard what she said, his expression suddenly changed. I've been nagging you to death all day. Others don't know that Fungin has no parents, but she knows. Fungin knew that these people had no ill intentions, so he smiled and said, There are no adults in my family. Seeing that Fungin still looked easygoing, Tian Wei breathed a sigh of relief and quickly grabbed the woman next to him and whispered, That child is very pitiful. His parents are no longer here. The woman just now quickly put her hand on her mouth and looked at Fungin to apologize. Oh, I'm sorry, kid, I didn't know that your father-in-law and your father-in-law are no longer here. Fungin waved her hand and said with a smile, It's okay, auntie. Etc. Several women suddenly looked at each other. They realized a problem. Both parents are gone. Could it be that this child bought such a big house by himself? No, it must be his relative or something, right? One of the women asked weakly, do you own this house? Fungin scratched his head. Ah, yes. Hiss. All the women's eyes widened and they gasped. A large house of 200 square meters costs at least 20 million taels, and it also has a second floor. The cost may have exceeded 30 million taels. All the property of the women present was estimated to be 5 million taels at most. 30 million taels. Numbers that are unimaginable. Aunt Tian Wei also looked dull. No, you had nothing in the first month or two. Co-author, are you secretly getting involved? Quote. All the women were silent. Auntie, why don't you talk? Say what? You said your house is so tall and big and we like it so much. Several women's back molars were almost broken. A fire ignited in their hearts, ready to go back and encourage their children. My child, Auntie remembered that she has something to do at home, so she needs to leave now. Please move around more often in the future. I'm leaving too. My son is about to get out of school and I have to pick him up. Now that they are gone, I'm going back too. Please move around more in the future, Fungin. Seeing Tian Wei and others disappear in a flash, Fungin raised the corner of his mouth and shook his head slightly. It seems that I have become someone else's child. He could already predict how they would compare when they returned. The big apartment that we worked so hard to build can be given to little Hinata to visit for the first time. Fungin locked the door and opened Kagura's inner eye. When the perception spreads to the Flying Thunder God mark in Hyuga's mansion, he activates the Flying Thunder God technique and appears on the spot. Flying Thunder God is all about convenience. Fungin sighed and knocked on Hyuga's door. Dong dong. Hearing the knock on the door, Hyuga Hanabi from inside the house ran over and opened the door. She shouted excitedly, "Sister is back." As a result, I saw a red hair. Her little face froze for a second. There was a bang. Close the door hard. Fungin patted the door again. "Where is your sister?" "My sister is not here." "Humph, little brat." Fungin didn't bother to ask her, and directly opened Kagura's inner eye to explore the mansion. Really not there. Then Fungin spread a little and felt that Hyuga Hiyashi, Hinata, Neji, etc. were all gathered in an old house. Fungin frowned slightly, having a bad feeling. "Hanabi, where are your sister and your father?" "I'm not telling you." "Oh, it must be your father who is taking your sister out to play. He didn't take you with him to keep an eye on the house." Squeak. The door to Hyuga's mansion was opened by Hyuga Hanabi. At this time, she pouted her swollen little mouth and said with a milky voice, "You think I'm stupid for using provocation? Hey, do you know how to provoke generals?" "Of course. My father bought me many books and I read them every day." Hyuga Hanabi curled his lips and said proudly. At this moment, Hyuga Shaw from the back room walked over in a decent manner and smiled politely at Fungin. "The head of the family and Hinata-sama are having a family meeting, so they are not here." "Really? Thanks. Family meeting." The last time Fungin heard the speech of the great elder Hyuga, it seemed that he was going to decide the successor at the family meeting. His brows knitted together. Sparks is at home, Hyuga Hiyashi and Hinata are both gone. Not good. Did Hiyashi, the old man, have already planned to plant a caged bird for Hinata, so he left Hanabi at home? Confused old man. Fungin cursed inwardly, opened Kagura's inner eye, sensed Hinata's location, and rushed over. Red hair. Hyuga Hanabi had an uneasy look on her face. Usually when there was a family meeting, her father would take her if she didn't want to go. Unexpectedly, this time he did not take her to the family meeting, but instead took her sister. Seeing the anxious look on the red-haired bad guy's face again, her heart was beating fast. If she was 50% uneasy before, she is extremely uneasy now. Hyuga Shaw saw Hyuga Hanabi's stunned figure at the door and was ready to step forward and hug her. "Let's go back, Hanabi-sama." Just when Hyuga Shaw was about to hug Hyuga Hanabi with her arms, she suddenly stepped away and ran towards the door. "Sister Shaw, I want to find my sister." "Lord Hanabi, the master of the house has told you not to run around." Hyuga Shaw hurriedly lifted up the sides of her maid uniform and chased out the door. In the meeting room of the Hyuga clan, everyone lowered their heads. Contributing to the reconstruction of the village. It is said that they contribute their meager efforts to the village, but in fact they are just free labor and do not receive any benefits. The great elder said sternly, "HMPH, no one is willing to even contribute to the reconstruction of the village. Hyuga Takashi, you pick 4 clan members in the branch house. I have inquired about other families and this is the standard. We don't ask for more than them, as long as we are no less than them." "Yes, great elder," a man in his 20s from the Zong family team responded. Hearing the great elder's words, Hyuga Neji's eyes were cold. Every time it's the branch house, everything happens from the branch house, even death has to be blocked by the branch house. Hyuga Neji clenched his fists angrily and lowered his head to prevent the elder from seeing anything unusual about him. The great elder stroked his beard, which was not very long. "Well, since you all have no objections, let's do it this way. The second thing will be announced by the Hiyashi clan leader." Then, everyone turned their attention. Hyuga Hiyashi's face was gloomy, but he regained his composure the moment he raised his head. "First elder, second elder, everyone. First of all, regarding the issue of the clan's heir, I have no plans to decide for the time being, just because my 2 daughters are extremely outstanding. If I don't choose carefully, it will affect the future prospects of the Hyuga clan." Hearing Hyuga Hiyashi say such words, the great elder's face sank and turned livid. The patriarch said this. Before that, the great elder said that the patriarch would announce the successor today. The clan leader and the great elder don't agree with each other. The heir to the clan should be chosen carefully, otherwise a regrettable genius like Hyuga Neji may appear. Are you an idiot? The patriarch obviously deliberately delayed choosing an heir because he didn't want any of his two daughters to become a branch house. In the past, when two people were born, the older brother was directly designated as the heir, and the younger brother was designated as the branch house. We at Hyuga have always been like this. So I can only hate my origin, but he actually wants to change this system, so who are we? Does he want to be a victim of reform? Quote, your analysis is right. I didn't believe such rumors when I heard them before. Now that I heard the clan leader's vague words, it seems that it is really the case. Alas. The whispers in the branch house team made Hyuga Neji unable to help but explode. More than anyone else, he hates the system of the Hyuga clan and the branch house. Hyuga Neji said sonorously, didn't the clan leader give up on the idea of Hinata-sama as the heir when he chose Hinata-sama to be a jonin school when he was a child? I'm sorry, Hinata-sama, but this is all I can do. Single quote. Hyuga Neji did not dare to look at Hyuga Hinata. He knew that his remarks might cause Hinata to be marked with the same mark as him. But he must act as a fuse, only in this way can he arouse dissatisfaction between the Zong family and the branch house. There is only the slightest possibility of destroying this clan branch house system. Hearing Hyuga Neji's words, everyone was startled and instantly remembered the decision made by Hyuga Hiyashi. The member of the branch house who was already dissatisfied before took advantage of the renewed noise around him, lowered his head and said in a low voice. You've obviously given up, but now you say you're excellent. Isn't it a bit too much? His voice was not loud, but it was just enough to cover up the noise and could be heard by every Hyuga clan member in the conference room. The members of the Zong family did not speak. They knew that the complaints in the branch house already existed, and this time was just an opportunity. It would be meaningless for them to say it, not to mention that there were their younger brothers and sisters in the branch house. The great elder deliberately did not stop, he just wanted to use this voice of dissatisfaction to put pressure on Hyuga Hiyashi. Hyuga Hiyashi had a gloomy face when he heard what the clan members said. When Hizashi died for him, he had the idea of abolishing this system, but he couldn't do it even as the clan leader. Because once a caged bird is planted, it will only dissipate if it dies. If the system is abolished, what does the branch house sitting opposite mean? Can't I even protect my own daughter now? Single quote. Hyuga Hiyashi was angry inside. Feeling that the calls were almost done, the great elder shouted sternly, quiet. Chapter 91. What you said is not completely unreasonable, but... The great elder's gentle tone paused for a moment, then changed the topic and became full of coercion. I believe that Chief Hiyashi is sincerely considering the future of the Hyuga clan, so he has given careful consideration. After hearing the words of the great elder, everyone in the branch house looked unhappy. At this moment, the second elder on the side said, since the patriarch said that both daughters are excellent, why not let the two daughters compete? The great elder agreed. It's feasible, just listen to the second brother. The person in the branch house thought for a moment and nodded slightly. Sorry, second elder, only the eldest daughter is here today. The younger daughter is not feeling well and is recuperating at home today, so let's choose another day. Hyuga Hiyashi has long thought that something like this might happen, so he usually brings Hanabi to brush his face in front of everyone, but today he brought Hinata. Although the Hyuga tribesmen present had doubts about the authenticity of Hyuga Hiyashi's words, they did not dare to express them. Only the great elder said solemnly, then let Hinata show off her abilities first. Neji, come on, I heard that you used to compete with each other. Hyuga has long heard that Hyuga Hinata has not even mastered Gentle Fist 8 trigrams 64 palms. Can such a person be called excellent? As long as Hinata is defeated in the family meeting, Hyuga Hiyashi will no longer have any excuses. Thinking of this, the great elder hurriedly turned his face sideways, because one side of his mouth Kakuzu was almost raised to the height of his nose, while the other corner of his mouth was still tightly pressed, so he had to turn his face sideways to show others. Ha, stubborn old man, you won't laugh until Hinata hits 8 trigrams air palm. Single quote. Hyuga Hiyashi looked at the uneasy Hinata and said, since the great elder has said so, Hinata will show the great elder the results of your cultivation. Hyuga Hinata raised her eyes and saw her father's expectant eyes, and her heart fluctuated a little. She had not seen her father's expectant eyes appear on her for a long time. Okay, father, I will do my best. Hyuga Neji said to the great elder. Neji obeys the order. Then he looked at Hyuga Hinata and clenched his fists. I lost to you unexpectedly last time, but I won't do it this time. Okay, let's go to the usual training ground to compete. Neji, be careful not to hurt Hinata. Hyuga Neji nodded respectfully. Copy that. Hearing the words of the great elder, Hinata's heart beat faster. Although she defeated Neji in the preliminaries, she still didn't have much confidence. Especially since he has never won in previous competitions, and now he has to show off his abilities in front of his tribe. Old stubborn, do you want to suppress my daughter's self-confidence before we even start? Single quote. Hyuga Hiyashi held Hinata's little hand. Don't be nervous. You have defeated Neji before. As long as you believe in yourself, you can do it. Hinata nodded heavily, showing a serious look. I want to win, but I can't lose my father's face, and I can't live up to my father's expectations. Not long after, everyone from the Hyuga clan arrived at Hyuga's largest private training venue. Large families like the Uchiha clan, Hyuga clan and Sarutobi clan usually have their own private training grounds. They are generally taught by elites in the family, and the conditions and knowledge are no worse than those of ninja schools. After everyone arrived, Hyuga Hinata and Hyuga Neji were already at the center of the training ground. That's it for the discussion, let's get started. The great elder specifically nodded at Hyuga Neji. As the great elder, he knew that Neji was full of resentment for the death of his father, Hazashi, and was somewhat hostile to the people of the clan. Following his order, roll your eyes. Hyuga Hinata and Hyuga Neji opened their eyes at the same time, and lines on their eyes appeared. Neji took the lead and knew during the qualifying round that Hinata had mastered the 8 trigrams air palm and he had to shorten the distance as soon as possible. Gentle fist law, 8 trigrams 64 palms. Hyuga Neji uses himself as the midpoint, and there seems to be a Tai Chi 8 trigrams diagram under his feet. Every step is traceable, but it is difficult to deal with. In an instant, he approached Hinata and struck 16 palms, extremely fast. Hiss. The people of the Zong family took a breath of cold air. I've heard about the white-eyed genius Hyuga Neji for a long time, but I didn't expect that he actually mastered 8 trigrams 64 palms. That's a physical skill that only our clan can master. It's incredible that he can learn it by himself. Genius. I heard that Hinata-sama has never defeated Neji, and has not yet mastered 8 trigrams 64 palms. On the other side of the branch house, after seeing Hyuga Neji's ability, some people's faces were filled with pride, and some people's faces were filled with unwillingness. One of the branch house tribesmen who admired Hyuga Neji very much said angrily. No matter how talented Neji is, so what? As a branch house, not only is his Byakugan ability suppressed, he can only be used as a scapegoat. Snort. A muffled sound sounded. The caged bird mark on the forehead of the branch house member who just spoke immediately broke out, and he fell to the ground rolling around wildly, wailing in pain. Ah, I was wrong. Great elder. When the rest of the branch house heard his miserable screams, they all turned their heads and couldn't bear to look. Forget it, he didn't mean to do it. The second elder on the side persuaded him easily. Then the great elder stopped controlling caged bird. The great elder said sternly, HMPH. Our Hyuga clan has always had such a system, similar to complaints, I don't want to hear it from anyone again. If I had become a branch house back then, I would have been equally willing to go through fire and water for the clan. Quote. The words of the great elder made the clan members present become speechless. The people in the branch house pinned their resentment on Hyuga Neji. Because of things off the field, it also affected Hinata and Neji. Hinata was a little distracted, and Neji became even more angry when he heard the tribesman's hiss of pain. The speed and strength of the hands increased one after another. 32 palms. 64 palms. Neji's attacks rained down. Hinata's Byakugan can catch it, but her own speed is still difficult to keep up. After receiving Hyuga Neji's 8 trigrams 64 palms, several acupuncture points on her body have been sealed. Brother Neji is indeed very strong. You can't fight him in close combat. Single quote. Hyuga Hinata's breathing was a little ragged. Chi, have you become stronger too? Single quote. Hyuga Neji rushed forward again with a cold face. If it didn't work once, he would use it twice. Neji teach her a lesson. Single quote. Everyone in the branch house looked at Hyuga Neji expectantly, as if every slap on Hinata was a slap on the Zong family's face. Hiashi, tell your daughter to admit defeat. The great elder on the side said calmly with his hands behind his back. Under his eye-rolling observation, Hinata has become weak. After receiving Hyuga Neji's attack, he will definitely fail miserably, so it is better to settle down decently. Hyuga Hiashi said calmly, thank you, great elder, for your concern. I know my daughter best. The great elder looked unhappy and frowned. Just when Hyuga Neji rushed forward, Hinata's heart was as calm as water, and her hand gesture changed instantly. This is. The elder wanted to stop the game, but suddenly his eyes widened and he stared at Hinata. As soon as Hyuga Neji took a step forward, he suddenly felt something bad, and a feeling of being locked came to his heart. Has she also mastered 8 trigrams 64 palms? The elder looked in disbelief, but Hinata's standard starting position made him recognize at a glance that he was going to use 8 trigrams 64 palms. She can also 8 trigrams 64 palms. Everyone also looked shocked. Hyuga Hiashi was also extremely shocked. He knew that his daughter knew 8 trigrams air palm, but he had never heard his daughter mention 8 trigrams 64 palms. In his understanding, Hinata could only hit 16 palms before she would get stuck. Gentle fist law, 8 trigrams 64 palms. It's the same move as before, but this time it's used by Hyuga Hinata. 8 palms, 16 palms. Hinata instantly got close and struck several palms, and her speed was as fast as Neji's. I didn't expect you to be making progress too. Hyuga Neji was unwilling, but was locked by 8 trigrams 64 palms and had to defend and parry. If you try to counterattack from it and fail, you will be caught in the gap and the key chakra acupoint will be sealed instantly. Once the 2 chakra acupoints on the heart and dantian are blocked, chakra will be unable to be mobilized for a short period of time. When he suppressed Hinata before, Hinata was guarding key acupoints, so that some attacks that were too fast had to give up blocking. 32 palms. 48 palms. Slowed down. The moment Hinata's palm speed slowed down, Hyuga Neji suddenly understood. Hinata hasn't quite mastered 8 trigrams 64 palms. There is a chance to fight back. As expected, you haven't mastered it yet. Hyuga Hiashi outside the court was also worried when he saw this scene. But the great elder's hanging heart finally sank. I said, how could they all be geniuses? I didn't master such a difficult physical skill until I was 18 years old. As long as Hinata is suppressed by Neji, the resentment of the branch house will pressure Hiashi. This is his purpose of letting the two fight. Hinata, who is in the 8 trigrams of Tai Chi, is breathing a little quickly, but her eyes are still firm. As a clan member, you were born with all the resources, why do you deserve such a look? Single quote. Hinata's eyes were like a thorn, piercing Hyuga Neji's already weak heart, and she was furious inside. 61 palms. 62 palms. Just when Hinata changed her last 2 palms, Hyuga Neji's eyes were cold. He caught the gap of Hinata's 63rd palm, and launched a counterattack. His left hand condensed chakra into a palm and attacked Hinata's abdomen, which is the navel dantian. As long as he can seal the chakra acupuncture point in his dantian, he will win. Boom. With 1 palm strike, he managed to hit Hinata. 63 palms. 64 palms. At the same time, Hinata's remaining 2 palms instantly hit Neji's heart. Both of them groaned and stepped back a few meters before barely regaining their balance. Hyuga Neji covered his chest and said, are you deliberately exposing yourself? Otherwise it would be difficult for me to hurt brother Neji. Hyuga Hinata wiped the blood seeping from the corner of her mouth and said. She actually managed to type 8 trigrams 64 palms. The great elder's eyes widened. I think I was one of the top geniuses back then, but today's geniuses are too evil, right? It seems that when they were with that boy, they did not neglect their practice. Single quote. Hyuga Hiashi was very pleased to see Hinata successfully play 8 trigrams 64 palms. He knew that his daughter could only hit 16 palms 2 months ago, but now she could hit 64. It was not easy. What's the situation now? Everyone who could activate their Byakugan opened their Byakugan and stared at the two people on the field. Both of them were in extremely bad condition, and the chakra extracted from the cells was obviously slowing down. Even so, I won't lose again. Hyuga Neji gritted his teeth, and the remaining chakra in his body forcefully circulated in his body. What is Neji doing? Everyone looked at the chakra running in Neji's body in confusion. Hinata's beautiful eyes narrowed. This is the 8 inner gates. That afternoon, when they were reviewing the basic ninja skills and the ninja attempt manual, Fangin mentioned the 8 inner gates to her. I also asked her to try, but she couldn't open the door even with her body. Brother Neji cannot be allowed to successfully activate. Hinata immediately activated the little chakra in her body to condense into her palms. Then he looked intently with his Byakugan, aimed at Neji's acupuncture point where chakra was pouring in, and struck out from the air. 8 trigrams air palm. Base. A high-density chakra block flew out from Hinata's hand and hit the opening point between Hyuga Neji's left eye and eyebrow. However, Hyuga Neji also knew a long time ago that Hinata would not just stare at him and rush to open the door. From the beginning, he stared at the flow of chakra in Hinata's body with his white eyes. The moment her chakra gathered in her palm and was shot, he judged which direction to avoid. When the 8 trigrams air palm hit was close to his eyebrows, Neji bent his legs and hid in a half-crouched position to avoid Hinata's attack. Bang! 8 trigrams air palm bombarded the trees behind it, knocking off large green leaves. What is that? What move did Hinata-sama use just now? 8 trigrams air palm. The great elder's face was ashen and his whole body was shaking. His eyes could see clearly that it was definitely 8 trigrams air palm. Especially on the tree trunk that was hit, there was a palm print. Hide one's edge and keep one's weakness. The great elder glanced at Hyuga Hiyashi with a downcast look. If the 8 trigrams 64 palms had surprised him before, the current 8 trigrams air palm was a move he had never dared to imagine. He didn't master the 8 trigrams air palm until he became elite Jonin, which proves the difficulty of this move. It especially tests the caster's subtle control over chakra. Beginners who do not have enough control will often disperse before the chakra flies half a meter, which is a complete waste of chakra, let alone killing enemies from a distance. Facing the great elder's gaze, Hyuga Hiyashi just smiled politely and responded to him. He had already known that his daughter had mastered the 8 trigrams air palm, so he felt so happy when he saw the great elder's frustrated expression. It's just that you have to do your best to save face, and you can't ridicule someone's face. In the middle of the training ground, after Hyuga Neji dodged, Hinata hit 8 trigrams air palm several times. Unfortunately, the latter is obviously weaker and slower, making it more difficult to hit Hyuga Neji. 8 inner gates. The first gate is open. Hyuga Neji finally used his only chakra to break open the wall of the door. A large amount of chakra instantly poured out from the door, and the previously sealed acupuncture points also rushed open. Facing the chakra blocks flying in front of him, Hyuga Neji just felt slow, very slow. He just turned his head slightly and dodged. He still succeeded. At this time, in her white eyes, the chakra in Hyuga Neji's body was no longer exhausted, but there was very little in her body. Sweat rolled down Hinata's cheeks. I can only use the gentle fist method once more, what should I do? See the sudden surge of chakra coming out of Neji's body. Everyone's faces were filled with horror. They didn't know what moves Hyuga Neji used to suddenly open the sealed acupuncture points. If we can also master this trick. They showed blazing eyes. There are also some people who know a little bit about it, such as Hyuga Hiyashi and the Great Elder. They immediately recognized it as 8 inner gates technique. Each gate breakthrough will receive a powerful increase. When the 8th gate is fully open, you can even gain power beyond cage level in a short period of time. But this kind of supreme power is not consistent with Hyuga's gentle fist method. I didn't expect that Neji could even master physical techniques like 8 inner gates. Hyuga Hiyashi sighed slightly after seeing it. Great Elder, shout. Just when he was about to call a halt to the game. Hyuga Neji on the field said, admit defeat, Hinata-sama. There was a confident smile on his lips. I won't admit defeat, brother Neji, come over and attack. Hinata assumes gentle fist stance. The Great Elder turned to look at Hyuga Hiyashi and asked, what did you just say? Hyuga Hiyashi paused for a second and said, nothing. Since Hinata was unwilling to admit defeat, how could he have the nerve to stop the game? It's just that his brows are knitted together, it's impossible not to worry, everyone can see the only chakra left in Hinata's body. Of course Hyuga Neji can see it too. Hyuga Neji frowned. You don't have much chakra left, so you have no chance of winning. If you continue to fight, you may be in danger. When the chakra in a ninja's body is exhausted, he may become unconscious or lose his life. Hinata's eye roll had faded, but she was still looking directly at Hyuga Neji. Seeing her like this, Hyuga Neji stopped admonishing her. As he raised his feet, a figure appeared beside Hinata, and he punched out. Without the blessing of Byakugan, it would be extremely difficult for Hinata to clearly capture Neji's form with the naked eye. But she had no choice but to give up. The Byakugan would continue to consume chakra. If it was left on all the time, she would lose her ability to fight before Neji could attack. Boom! Snapped. For a moment, the sounds of fighting could be heard in the training ground. Neji, why not use 8 trigrams 64 palms? Do you have a heart? Hinata-sama has almost no chakra left in her body, and you still use 8 trigrams 64 palms. Do you want to kill someone? Yes, also, the attitude of the people at the branch house towards Hinata has also changed. She has indeed shown her excellent abilities. Whether it is 8 trigrams 64 palms or 8 trigrams air palm, being able to master them at this age is enough to prove that she has the ability to lead the Hyuga clan. Boom! Suddenly Hinata was swept low by Neji, causing her body to become unstable, and then she was greeted with a punch. Hinata realized that Neji was about to attack and immediately protected her face. You guessed wrong. Hyuga Neji did not use his speed to dodge into the air, but was below him and hit Hinata on the back with a palm. Pong! Hinata groaned and fell to the ground, the pain in her internal organs making it difficult for her to stand. The moment Neji's palm containing chakra hit Hinata, the chakra penetrated directly, causing internal damage. You lose. Before Hyuga Neji could finish speaking, Hinata spit out a mouthful of blood and slapped a palm in the air. 8 trigrams air palm. The high-density chakra block was shot straight towards Neji's heart. It's all the chakra that Hinata has condensed. The speed is extremely fast, and the distance between the two is very close at this time. Neji's pupils shrank. Then it quickly rotated with the whole body as the center. 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven. A blue chakra barrier instantly formed from his body. 8 trigrams air palm dissipated into the air the moment it touched revolving heaven. Hinata, who was already unconscious, was instantly hit by revolving heaven's chakra flow and flew into the air. Hinata. Hyuga Hiyashi ignored the shock of the 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven controlled by Neji. It would be extremely dangerous for his unconscious daughter to fall from the sky to the ground like this. Just when he was about to step forward to catch Hinata, a figure rushed forward very quickly to catch Hinata, and the two hugged each other. Fungin, why are you here? Hyuga Hiyashi's eyes flashed with shock. The person who caught Hinata was Fungin, who came all the way. Hinata. At this time, his face was full of anxiety, and he felt that the chakra on Hinata's body was almost dry. Fungin quickly leaned down and gently laid Hinata flat on the ground. He hurriedly used the healing jutsu to heal the damage to Hinata's internal organs. Uncle, what's going on? He suppressed his anger and asked in a calmer tone. This. Hyuga Hiyashi didn't know what to say for a moment. After all, this was a family meeting of the Hyuga clan. Elder sister. Another milky voice suddenly came from behind him. Hanabi, why are you here too? Hyuga Hiyashi opened his mouth slightly. Lord Hanabi. Before he could react, Hyuga Sha ran panting from behind. Master of the family, first elder, second elder. Hyuga Sha quickly greeted each other in turn. Hyuga Sha, how could you? Hyuga Hiyashi felt his heart suddenly stopped and he almost couldn't catch his breath. Hyuga Sha lowered her head and did not dare to speak. Sister, what's wrong with you? Hyuga Hanabi looked at Feng An's unconscious sister in front of him, big tears welling up in his eyes. The rest of the people present looked at each other, not knowing what to do. At this time, the great elder asked in a low voice, Hiyashi, who is he? He is. Hyuga Hiyashi was struggling internally and didn't know how to introduce it. Feng An, who was treating Hinata, said in a deep voice, my name is Feng'en, and Hinata and I are boyfriend and girlfriend. He did not raise his voice deliberately, but every word was clearly printed in the minds of everyone present. What? Everyone present opened their mouths and looked at Feng'en in disbelief. Did I hear you correctly? He said that he and Hinata-sama are boyfriend and girlfriend. I can testify that you heard it right, I heard it too. However, our Hyuga clan is not allowed to marry with foreign races. It exploded. I wonder if the clan leader knows about this. This boy has great courage. Woo, I also want sweet love. Hanako, you're already 30, and you're still in love. Whether you can find someone or not is a question. Hearing Feng'en's words, the great elder became furious. Quiet. Silence. Give me the silence. Then he angrily yelled at Hyuga Hiashi, Hiashi. Do you really want to change the dynasty and destroy the long-term survival path of our Hyuga clan? Hearing the great elder's angry rebuke, Hyuga Hiashi also recovered from his trance. He also didn't expect Feng'en to directly reveal his relationship with Hinata. It seems that it can't be delayed any longer. Single quote. Hyuga Hiashi looked directly into the great elder's furious gaze and said, I have been holding back a sentence for many years. From the moment my brother Hazashi died, I wanted to say it. I want to abolish these deformed systems. Hearing this, the elder's face turned red and his chest rose and fell crazily. Okay, I think you don't want to be the clan leader anymore. Old stubborn. Did I hear correctly just now? You heard it right, I heard it too. The clan leader used foul language. Are you going to let me witness this historic moment? Fight. Question mark. All the Hyuga clan members fell silent and stared at the little Heizi who spoke. Xiao Heizi shrank his neck and shouted, Don't start fighting. You, Hiashi. The great elder was furious and raised his trembling finger to point at Hyuga Hiashi. The second elder next to him hurriedly stepped forward and grabbed the eldest elder. Don't be angry, we are all members of the family, don't hurt your harmony. Chief Hiashi, what are you talking about in anger? You can sit down and talk calmly about anything. Hyuga Hiashi said seriously. Second elder, Hiashi is not speaking out of anger, but speaking from the bottom of his heart. As the leader of the clan, I am not inappropriate. Okay, you shouldn't, right? Hyuga Takashi, from now on, you will be the leader of the Hyuga clan. Hyuga Takashi, who was standing beside him, was stunned for a moment. Is the great elder going crazy with anger? It should be, otherwise why would the Hyuga clan leader be decided so hastily, and it is not up to him alone to make the decision. Aren't you here to choose the future heir of the clan today? Why did you end up choosing the clan leader instead? The second elder quickly tried to persuade him. Elder, this is not okay. Our Hyuga clan has never had a precedent of deposing a clan leader. If he doesn't want to be a leader, how can I tie him to a chair? The great elder snorted coldly. Hyuga Hiashi turned around and walked to Feng'en, greeting, let's go. Feng'en shook his head. We can't walk now. Hinata's injury is very serious. She has to wait until I stop the internal bleeding in her body before she can move. Hyuga Hiashi frowned and observed with his white eyes. When he saw Hinata's pulse slowing down, he subconsciously tightened his fists. It's my fault, I should have stopped you. Sister. Hyuga Hanabi wiped the tears from her eyes and glared at Hyuga Neji. Brother Neji, why did you hurt my sister? Hyuga Neji stood blankly in the middle of the field, feeling extremely complicated. He hated the Zong family and was worried about Hinata who was injured by him. Roll your eyes. The lines on both sides of Hyuga Hanabi's eyes bulged as he rushed towards Hyuga Neji. Hyuga Neji gritted his teeth and did not choose to avoid it. What? How old is the clan leader's little daughter before she can turn on her white eyes? Incredible. Everyone in the Hyuga clan was shocked when they saw Hanabi's eyes instantly open. Come back, Hanabi, Hyuga Hiashi shouted. Hearing this, Hyuga stopped in front of Neji, rubbed his red eyes, and didn't go any further. Neji didn't mean it. I am mostly responsible for your sister's injury this time. Cough. At this moment, Hinata coughed and blood came out of her mouth. Daughter, sister, Hyuga Hiashi and Hyuga Hanabi exclaimed at the same time, worry written on their faces. Hyuga Shah, go find the medical ninja quickly. Yes, master. There's no need to find a medical ninja, just go to the hospital and book a room. Sweat beads rolled down Feng An's face, and his solemn expression softened a bit. Healing jutsu is a great test of a ninja's fine control of chakra. Although this is difficult for ordinary people, it can be overcome. But for Feng An, who has Chatanla, it is very difficult for him to suffer mentally, especially when treating someone important to him. The psychological pressure is doubled. Yes. After Hyuga Shah responded, she quickly ran outside. My heart has calmed down. Hyuga Hiyashi rolled his eyes and saw Hinata's heartbeat and pulse gradually becoming stable, and then his heart dropped. The Great Elder and other clan members also breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Hinata regaining her calmness. If something happens to Hinata, no one knows whether Hyuga Hiyashi will go crazy and do something. After stopping Hinata's internal bleeding, Feng An carefully picked up Hinata and left with Hiyashi and Hanabi outside the training ground. Wait a minute, the Great Elder said with a sullen face, declare the heir of the clan before leaving. Are you going too far? Hyuga Hiyashi rolled his eyes angrily and stared at the elder. Seeing Hyuga Hiyashi's furious look, the Jonin-level clan members subconsciously moved closer to the elder. They don't think that the current Great Elder is still capable of fighting against the clan leader. Once the clan leader really takes action, they are afraid that he will die in the blink of an eye with the Great Elder's body and bones. The Great Elder shouted angrily, are you trying to do something to me? Shut up, you old fool. Feng An frowned and said in a deep voice. He was already upset, because he was in the Hyuga clan, and his father-in-law was the leader of the Hyuga clan, so he couldn't get too involved, but they kept chattering, which made him extremely bored. Then he looked at Hyuga Hiyashi and said, Uncle, please declare Hyuga Hanabi as the heir of the clan. Hyuga Hiyashi said sternly, no. Feng An, you don't understand. I know, caged bird, that once Hanabi becomes the heir, Hinata will be divided into branch houses and be engraved with caged bird. Then you still, Feng An said with cold eyes, I just want to see who dares to engrave Hinata with the caged bird mark. The Great Elder smiled instead of being angry. Ha! What a shame. Who are you? Are you here to interfere in the family affairs of my Hyuga clan? He's not a thing. He's a red-haired bad guy. He's also my brother-in-law. Hyuga Hanabi turned his head and angrily attacked the elder. Seeing Feng An's anxious look for his sister, and hearing him talk about the relationship between boyfriend and girlfriend, Hanabi felt a little shaken in her heart. I'm very happy that you can call me brother-in-law, but my brother-in-law doesn't like what you said before about me not being a thing. Hyuga Hanabi pouted. Don't go too far. It's because you care so much about your sister that I reluctantly give you a little bit of my sister's love. The Great Elder clenched a fist with one hand and thumped his chest violently. Okay. Hiyashi, you taught me a good daughter. Hyuga Hiyashi ignored his words and looked at Feng An. Feng An showed a reassuring expression. Don't worry, uncle, don't worry about me, just declare Hanabi as the heir. Who's worried about you? I'm worried about my eldest daughter. As for Feng An's strength, Hyuga Hiyashi is still willing to believe in him. It just so happens that his plan to postpone it has been ruined. He might as well give it a try. If it doesn't work, it's not too late to overturn the table. After looking around at the clan members present, Hyuga Hiyashi said, I declare Hyuga Hanabi to be the heir of the clan. Everyone was in an uproar. The patriarch really believes what that brat said so wildly. Is the patriarch also old? The Great Elder said loudly, okay. From now on, Hyuga Hanabi will be the heir of the clan house, and Hyuga Hinata will be the branch house. Come here, leave Hyuga Hinata behind and mark it. After hearing the Great Elder's order, everyone hesitated and did not take any action. Have you forgotten all the rules of the Hyuga clan? After angrily reprimanding, the Great Elder was about to activate the caged bird mark. Seeing this, the people from the branch house quickly stepped forward to block the way of Hyuga Hiyashi and others. Sorry, clan leader, according to the Hyuga clan rules, Hinata-sama should indeed be marked with the caged bird mark. After Feng An handed Hinata in his arms to Hiyashi, without saying a word, he used the shadow clone technique. Let's go, uncle, and sister-in-law. Then Feng An's clone picked up Hyuga Hanabi and jumped into the sky and left. Hyuga Hiyashi immediately understood what Feng An meant. Be careful. Then he followed Feng An's clone and jumped away. Although Hinata's injury has been stabilized at this time, she needs to rest and her chakra is basically exhausted, which is still a very dangerous state. The Great Elder shouted, "Stop them!" Several Branch House clan members chased the two. Some of them were dissatisfied with the elders forcing them to do things, and there were also some who wanted Hinata to stay and bear the mark of caged bird like them. For some Branch House people who have been under the control of caged bird, misfortune that befalls them is called misfortune. Only when it befalls everyone can their hearts become balanced. If the caged bird mark could be lifted, the people in the Branch House would definitely change their attitude and support its abolition. Unfortunately, since the existence of the Hyuga clan, there has never been a person who has unlocked the caged bird alive. Accept your fate, Patriarch. Unless caged bird can be unlocked, this system will never be destroyed. A faster Hyuga tribesman shouted towards the figure of Hyuga Hiyashi. Just when the tribesman was about to catch up, he was suddenly kicked in the face by a figure. He didn't even see the opponent's figure clearly, he just felt as if he had been hit by a cannonball, and the entire bridge of his nose was dented and shattered. Boom! Then it hit the ground hard and made a loud noise. He fainted without even being able to make a sound. Seeing this, the remaining slow clan members slowed down one after another. The person involved didn't see it clearly, but they could see it clearly with their white eyes behind them. It was Feng An's shadow clone that came back and kicked out a swift blow. Is shadow clone so strong? No wonder I dared to be confident. It turns out I came prepared. Before this, everyone had only thought that he was someone paid by the clan leader to act together, but they didn't expect that he was really capable. After all the people from the Hyuga clan who were trying to pursue him stopped, Feng An himself walked up to the Hyuga clan member lying on the ground and used healing jutsu. Due to Hinata's relationship with her father, he would not do anything irreversible unless necessary. After all, this matter cannot be handled like Shimura Danzo. Seeing that no one dared to step forward for a while, the Great Elder was very angry. They keep saying that Konoha is the strongest. But they were so frightened by a child that their legs became weak, right? Suddenly a discordant whisper came out. You are not soft, go ahead. Who? Suddenly, the Great Elder scanned everyone with his eagle-like eyes. You dare to say it, but you dare not admit it. However, he could not accurately identify the voice that emanated from the crowd. Feng An looked at Hyuga's elder who was furious and couldn't help but chuckled. Old guy, you can break your defense in one go. You're really not afraid of sudden death from a heart attack. You. Feng An scolded unceremoniously. What are you? You old thing. How dare you bully my Hyuga clan like this? I will definitely ask the top management of Konoha to help you. Feng An chuckled softly and glanced at him with disdain. Oh, you are really ridiculous. You are not the chief elder of the strongest clan. Are you still going to file a complaint? He sneered at the words of the Great Elder. The two old men who could help him were already dead. The other two senior executives of Konoha village are currently very busy and have no time to talk to him, a product of the old era. You are shameless. The Great Elder has long been at a loss for words, and his curse vocabulary cannot be compared with Feng An. No offensive power. Single quote. Feng An stretched and said, if you have anything else to say, I'll leave without you. Everyone looked at me, and I looked at you, without saying a word. Because they found that the red-haired boy on the opposite side was not targeting them, but was focusing on verbally attacking their Great Elder. The Great Elder was so furious that he almost vomited blood, but everyone didn't feel much. The second elder on the side also understood the situation and did not interrupt. Anyway, it's not me who is being scolded, and I can't be beaten again and again, so why go and find fault? Useless things. Haha. The elder took a few deep breaths after cursing. A child with a yellow mouth who lives in a stable era. Do you know how many times I have experienced the baptism of chaos and war? Roll your eyes. The Great Elder immediately launched the gentle fist method unique to the Hyuga clan. The second elder who was watching the show saw that something was wrong and quickly tried to dissuade him. The elder can't do it, he can't do it. He didn't dare to watch the Great Elder actually fight. Although he was once an elite Jonin at his peak, but now his body and bones would probably be broken apart by the opponent's punch. Once the first elder falls, how can he, the second elder who has no sense of existence, have a good life? After hearing the second elder's dissuasion, the first elder became even more enthusiastic. Second brother, don't stop me, just show him what it means to be a real strong man. While the second elder was pulling him, he was cursing in his mind, don't you think about how your body looks like? You have to die in front of me today, right? Feng watched their performance quietly from the side. The Hyuga people on the side also relaxed, just like a group of melon-eating people, only one of them had a handful of melon seeds to eat. You two, are you ready to hold on until dark? Feng An's sleepiness overflowed. The great elder shouted angrily, stop pulling, if I pull again, I'll beat you up too. Hearing his scolding, which was like a shrinking cerebellum, the second elder simply let go of his hand. Good words can't persuade you to die. Just die if you want. The elder who broke free immediately was stunned for a second. Are you really going to let go? Feng An said in a sincere tone. Looking at how old you are, I won't bully the older ones. I'll just use the ninjutsu I just learned. When the great elder heard Feng An's words, he felt happy, but his face remained sullen and silent. How proficient can you be with the ninjutsu you just learned? And at his age, no matter how strong he is, he can only touch a B-level ninjutsu that can break the sky. As long as you exchange a move with him, and then decisively make a happy expression as if the senior recognizes the junior, you can save your own face and dampen his spirit. Thinking of this, the great elder Kakuzu couldn't help but raise his mouth. Then he said seriously, don't say that I bully you, I just let you take the first move. Okay, that's what you asked for. Feng An nodded slightly. He took out the kunai that had been marked with the flying thunder god before and threw it casually towards the great elder. That's it. You're looking down on me too much. The great elder smiled confidently. With the kunai flying at the speed in front of him, even if he didn't open his Byakugan, he could dodge it at will. The great elder turned to one side and hid. The moment the kunai flew past his left cheek, Feng An moved. In a flash, he appeared on the left side of the great elder. When the great elder caught Feng An with his white eyes, he had already appeared on his left side and launched an attack. His face changed instantly, and in his white eye field of vision, Feng An suddenly arrived to his left. The movement track was not captured at all, which made him feel incredible. Before he could react, Feng An punched him and went towards him. Boom, click. The crisp sound of a punch hitting the great elder's skull was still echoing, and at the same time, the sound of a broken skull followed closely. Following the trend, his body flew sideways, and did not stop until it crashed into the wall and opened a big hole. Feng An pocketed the kunai. Everyone heard it. He asked me to take action first. The scene that happened in front of them made them open their mouths. Even with his eyes open, he subconsciously rubbed his eyes, trying to see more clearly. Is the great elder dead? I don't know if he's dead or not, but looking at the destructive power, he probably won't be able to survive. Isn't that just death? Everyone thought about various endings, but they never expected that the great elder would die without even catching a single move. After all, he is also the former elite Jonin level. Then everyone looked at the delicate-looking Feng An with fear on their faces, with great doubts in their hearts. That's what ninjutsu Feng An used just now. Even the Byakugan could not catch the movement trajectory. Although they could not react to the extremely fast speed of Feng An's clone before, the Byakugan could already capture the trajectory. This is incredible and beyond their knowledge. Of course, a small number of Hyuga clan members guessed the ninjutsu used by Feng An, but no one dared to ask for confirmation. Among them, the second elder knows better. After his mind raced, he came to a conclusion. He uses space-time ninjutsu, the famous ninjutsu of the fourth Hokage. You can't go wrong. Only the flying thunder god technique can make Byakugan unable to catch the movement trajectory, because there is no trajectory at all. The second elder swallowed hard, his face pale. Feng An raised his eyes and looked at the second elder and asked, the great elder unfortunately passed away today. Second elder, what do you think we should do now? After hearing the sound, the rest of the clan looked at the second elder. They almost forgot that there were two elders in the family. The second elder's already pale face deepened even more, and he subconsciously took a step back. Well, you died a long time ago. You were obviously beaten to death with one punch. He only dared to curse secretly in his heart, and never showed any emotion on his face. Since the eldest elder, longevity, died, let's do it in a glorious way. When the second elder said this, his face twitched a few times. He didn't even dare to look at the great elder, who tilted his head and stared at him in the distance. Well, as the clan leader's son-in-law, if he encounters something as gratifying as his death, I will definitely give my best. With that said, Feng'an used wood style to create a coffin that fit the great elder's body shape. Seeing this scene, everyone took a breath again. Because they suck away all the cold air, this also leads to increased global warming in the future. Built a coffin using wood style. The second elder wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, his face couldn't stop twitching, and said, haha. I think the first elder is aware of this gift and will definitely thank you. The rest of the Hyuga tribe present stared at the second elder, some with disdain and some with approval. If possible, the second elder would also like to be an upright person, but the upright former is still lying aside at this time. He still follows his inner decision and chooses not to be upright. Feng'an glanced at the second elder casually. At their age, there are not many people who can bend and stretch. Then I will keep this coffin and say goodbye to all my relatives and friends. Feng'an closed his eyes and disappeared in an instant. After he left, everyone still couldn't let go for a long time. A good family meeting, let the elder hold the meeting until the end, and you will lose yourself. Quiet. This silent silence lasted for who knows how long, and was finally broken by someone speaking. A Hyuga tribesman asked weakly, shall we carry the great elder in? On the other side, Feng'an has arrived at Konoha Hospital and marked the entrance of the hospital with the Flying Thunder God mark. When he made the mark before, he never thought that one day he would come to Konoha Hospital, so he didn't even think of marking it at the hospital. After entering the hall, what you see is a lot of busy ninjas. Even though the medical ninjas were transferred quickly, most of the important Konoha Hospital was still destroyed. Feng'an closed her eyes, opened Kagura's inner eye, sensed the familiar chakra, climbed the stairs, and looked for someone. Along the way, he discovered that many wards here didn't even have doors. Finally, Hinata and others were found in Ward 205, which also had no door. Red hair, sister suit. After seeing Feng'an, Hyuga Hanabi's mouth almost twisted before he could hold back a second sentence of submission. This made her tremble all over. Feng'an came closer and rolled his eyes at her. Are you so embarrassed? Didn't you shout pretty standard before? Humph, before was before, and now is now. How can I share it with you when I only have one sister? A little. Hyuga Hanabi stuck out his tongue at Feng'an shamelessly. Seeing that Hanabi was not in as bad a mood as before, Feng'an felt relieved. It seems Hinata is fine. Single quote. Then, Feng'an came closer and looked at Hinata, who was lying on the hospital bed with her bangs spread out and her eyes closed, sleeping. A cute version of Sleeping Beauty. Feng'an murmured in his heart, and then got closer and closer. Cough, cough. Hyuga Hiyashi, who was sitting next to him, coughed twice. Feng'an straightened up quickly and said seriously, I just saw something dirty on Hinata's face. Who asked you? You're not asking for it, right? Single quote. Hyuga Hiyashi glared at him. You got away so quickly. Didn't they make things difficult for you? No. Feng'an shook his head. Hyuga Hiyashi frowned slightly. What about the great elder? He didn't stop you either. I stopped him once and then stopped. Hyuga Hiyashi nodded. With the combat power shown by Feng'an, it was reasonable to be able to suppress the great elder. Sigh, your life will not be easy in the future. I know that stubborn old man's temper all too well. He will definitely try his best to get rid of you and give Hinata a caged bird. It's okay. He should be lying in the coffin by now. How could there not be? Hyuga Hiyashi was stunned. After reacting, he grabbed Feng'an's shoulders with his big hands. Who do you think the coffin was in? Hyuga Hiyashi quickly changed his words. No, who got into the coffin? What you call a stubborn old man, great elder? Hyuga Hiyashi said in a low voice. Did you kill the great elder? It wasn't me, he killed himself. Feng'an responded. Hyuga Hiyashi sighed. Well, since the stubborn old man is dead, let me, the clan leader, handle the subsequent matters. He had thought that he would have to quarrel with the Grand Elder countless times over the Hyuga clan's system, but he never expected that the two of them would only quarrel once and then have no chance again. Feng'an nodded. After he looked around the entire ward, he said, "Uncle, I want to take Hinata to my home to recuperate." Hyuga Hiyashi was startled. "No, you." Fungin scratched his head. "Well, it's not what you think. My home is very empty, and the location is very remote, relatively quiet, and very suitable for recuperation. Do you think the environment of this ward is acceptable?" Hyuga Hiyashi also looked around Ward 205. Not only were there no doors, there were no windows either. The surrounding environment was quite noisy with all kinds of sounds. Perhaps the only good thing is that this hospital bed is normal. Seeing this, Hyuga Hiyashi also felt that this environment was not as good as his Hyuga mansion. "Okay, but you kid, don't lie to me about saying your home environment is better just because, cough." Hyuga Hanabi, who was sitting aside and holding Hinata's little hand, turned his head and asked, "Hey, what do you mean? Cough, cough, why do children care so much?" "Oh." Hyuga Hanabi tilted his head back again. She is still a little afraid of her father. Hyuga Hiyashi always frowns and looks very strict during training. "Then I'll go through the discharge procedures." Fungin got up and walked towards the front desk of the hospital. After some communication with the front desk staff, they confirmed that the patients in Ward 205 were out of danger and successfully signed the discharge form. Not long after, Fungin returned to Ward 205. Seeing Fungin coming back, Hyuga Hiyashi stood up and prepared to pick up Hinata. "Uncle, there's no need to bother." Fungin marked the room with the Flying Thunder God mark, and then put his hand on Hyuga Hiyashi's shoulder. "Close your eyes and open the Kagura mind eyes." From a distance, he could only use Kagura's hard eye to sense the existence of the mark. Hyuga Hiyashi looked at Fungin in confusion, not knowing what he was doing. Flying Thunder God Technique. Sensing the mark at home, Fungin directly activated the Flying Thunder God Technique and instantly appeared in his 200 square meter apartment. Where are Hongmao and my father?" Hyuga Hanabi opened his mouth slightly and looked at the place where the two of them were standing just now. Hyuga Hiyashi felt his mind was in a trance for a while, and then the scene in front of him changed. He looked at the empty hall around him, confused, and looked again and again. Fungin asked carefully, "Uncle, are you okay?" "No, it's okay." "What did you do?" Flying Thunder God Technique teleported. Flying Thunder God Technique. When did you learn this thing? Is this the forbidden technique? Hyuga Hiyashi was shocked. Fungin was relieved when he heard that Hyuga Hiyashi could still shout. This was the first time he used the Flying Thunder God Technique to lead someone. Although there was a precedent for leading people, he still used his old father-in-law as a test subject. Whoosh. After closing his eyes, Fungin disappeared from the same place in an instant. When I opened my eyes, I was already in Ward 205. "Ah, why did you suddenly?" Before Hyuga Hanabi could finish speaking, Fungin hugged her directly. Whoosh. Send it to your room. Just after sending him there, Fungin came to Hinata again in the blink of an eye. Looking at Hinata sleeping soundly, Fungin scratched his head and then put his hand on the hospital bed. Whoosh. He was teleported home with the hospital bed. Hyuga Hiyashi looked at Fungin, who was not breathing and didn't want to ask any more questions. After all, he had already seen Fungin's amazing amount of chakra. But when he saw that even the bed had been brought back, he still couldn't help but ask, "Why did you steal the bed back too?" "What does stealing mean?" "This is borrowing. I will send it back to the hospital after I use it." Fungin thought that she only had a wooden bed at home, and she hadn't had time to choose a soft bed. She couldn't let Hinata sleep on a hard wooden bed. So he also borrowed the bed in the ward. Hyuga Hiyashi was stunned and speechless. "Ever since I saw this brat, my majesty has simply disappeared. He is really my nemesis." Single quote. Afterwards, Fungin, Hyuga Hiyashi, and Hanabi walked around the apartment. "Uncle, does my place meet your expectations?" It fits so well. Did you get the 200 square meters mansion from there? Could it be that you stole it with Flying Thunder God?" Fungin rolled her eyes at him. "If the Flying Thunder God is so awesome, I'll just move Hyuga's mansion next to me." Hyuga Hiyashi stayed with Hinata for a few more hours until it got dark. He stood up and said, "Hanabi, let's go back." Hyuga Hanabi whispered, "I want to stay here with my sister." "Okay, then you can play with your red-haired brother." Hyuga Hiyashi thought for a moment and then agreed. Just because he still had a lot of trivial matters to deal with after returning, and he didn't have time to train Hanabi, so why not let her rest these days? Hyuga Hanabi smiled and said, "Okay. Goodbye, father." After Hyuga Hiyashi left, Hyuga Hanabi approached Feng En. "Red-haired bad guy, can you pass Sister Shaw over here too?" Feng En raised his eyebrows. "Isn't this not good?" "What's wrong? Sister Shaw's cooking is delicious. I've been hungry all day." Hyuga Hanabi complained as she rubbed her belly. As soon as he heard Hanabi say he was hungry, Feng En remembered that he had not eaten for the same day. Immediately, he closed his eyes, opened them, and appeared in the Hyuga mansion. After a little awareness, I found Hyuga Shaw in the kitchen. She happened to be washing vegetables at this time. "Feng En, haven't the master of the family and Master Hanabi come back yet? Sister-in-law asked me to pick you up." "Ah." After saying that, Feng En hurriedly packed up the pots, bowls, meals, etc., and put a hand on Hyuga Shaw's shoulder. "Close your eyes, open your eyes." Whoosh. The two of them appeared at Feng En's home. As soon as he landed, he heard a childish voice. "That's great. The red-haired bad guy is pretty awesome." Hyuga Hanabi happily threw herself into the arms of Hyuga Shaw, who was still trapped in a trap, and said aggrievedly, "Sister Shaw, I'm so hungry." On the other side, Hyuga Hiyashi, who returned to Hyuga's mansion, looked around but couldn't find Hyuga Shaw. "Where are the people?" Hearing his stomach growl, he walked towards the kitchen. "I haven't cooked in several years. I don't know if my cooking skills are still there." However, after he entered the kitchen, he was a little confused looking at the kitchen that looked like it had been ransacked. Quote. "Where's the pot?" The news of the war between Konoha village and Sunagakur and the death of 3rd Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen has been known to every village in the country. The Country of Thunder, Cloud Shinobi Village, inside Raikage's office. Sitting at the desk, 4th Raikage looked at Omoi with his head lowered in front of him and asked. "You said that when there was unrest in Konoha, the Konoha shinobi killed us Cloud Shinobi Village ninjas." Omoi: "Yes, I saw the red-haired kid kill Keita with my own eyes, but the kid said it was Keita and the others who wanted to kidnap him, so he killed him, and..." "Okay, I understand, go down." Before Omoi could finish speaking, 4th Raikage interrupted him. "Yes, Lord Raikage." Omoi nodded, not daring to say more. After he left, a dark-skinned, white-haired woman stood beside him and said, "Raikage-sama, are Keita and the others because of their white eyes?" 4th Raikage waved his hand. "It's not important, just like before, blame Konoha for killing the Cloud Shinobi ninja. Mabuyi, go and call Samui and the others, and you will go to Konoha together. Konoha, which has been hit hard now, I believe there will be a good harvest this time." Quote. "Understood, Raikage-sama." Mabuyi nodded and left. "Konoha, you dared to give me a useless corpse 8 years ago. Let's see how you break the situation this time." 4th Raikage secretly hated it. Earth Country Iwagakure. Onoki was doing exercises to relieve the pain in his waist. Did Sarutobi die in the battle? Do you want to put some pressure on Konoha and do some good? Kurigakure of the Water Country, one of the remaining 5 major nations, was still in the haze of the Blood Mist policy and was indifferent to the unrest in Konoha. Rain Country, Rain Shinobi Village. It is a completely different architectural style from other villages. The dark-colored metal buildings and drainage pipes everywhere, coupled with the year-round rain, make Rain Shinobi Village even more mysterious. On the long tongue of a statue, an orange-haired man wearing a black windbreaker embroidered with red clouds sat on it with one foot in the air. He raised his eyes slightly to feel the heavy rain falling. The war between Nagato, Konoha Village and Sunagakur is over. A blue-haired woman wearing the same clothes as the man fell behind him. The orange-haired man paused for 2 seconds and said calmly, "Thank you for your hard work, Conan." As for Konoha Village, it is still leaderless at this time. The 2 consultants only hope that Jiraiya can find Tsunade as soon as possible. Mitokado Homura sighed slightly. "I didn't expect that Danzo would die in this turmoil. You detain Kaharu. That guy, even if the 2 of us agree, he can't be a Hokage. He has no hope at all just based on the Jonin voting. I didn't expect him to be a Hokage, but how could he die for the village with such a temperament? Let Anbu check it out." "Okay, now Konoha still has to rely on us 2 old guys. It would be great if the 4th generation project is still there. Just as the two were sighing, a ninja came to report. 2 advisors, the Cloud Shinobi Village ninjas request to see Lord Hokage. Cloud Shinobi ninja asks to see Lord Hokage. Mitokado Homura frowned. Don't they know that Sarutobi died in the battle? Udatane Kaharu narrowed his eyes. How could you not know? They are coming here now, most likely to add insult to injury and gain benefits. Let's go and hear the purpose of Cloud Shinobi Village's visit first, and then make any plans. Night. Hyuga Hanabi, who was staring at Hinata with her little face in her hands, noticed that her sister's eyebrows suddenly trembled. Her eyes lit up immediately and she shouted loudly, "Sister, wake up." Aha! Feng, who was practicing on the 2nd floor, opened his eyes with joy on his face. He ran down immediately regardless of the fatigue of practicing. Hinata, who was lying on the hospital bed, raised her eyebrows and slowly opened her eyes, revealing her pure pupils. Feng, hearing Hinata's feeble whisper, tears welled up in Hyuga Hanabi's eyes. Wow, 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 I'm obviously taking care of my sister, but when she opens her mouth, she calls her a red-haired bad guy. I'm sorry, Hanabi, sister didn't see you just now. Hyuga Hanabi is too short and has to stand on tiptoes to reach a head height above the hospital bed, so when Hinata opens her eyes, only Feng is the first person in her field of vision. Feng lightly flicked Hanabi's forehead, looked at Hinata and smiled. No need to apologize to this little brat, she slept like a pig during the day, I am clearly taking care of her. How do you feel physically now? I feel, gululu. There was a sound of hunger. Before Hinata could finish her words, she was interrupted by a sudden cooing. Her originally pale face turned rosy in an instant, and she quickly covered her face with the quilt. Hinata has been comatose for 2 days and 1 night since she started comatose, and she will inevitably feel hungry. How could I forget that Hinata's belly is an extra-dimensional pocket? Single quote. Feng tapped his forehead. He actually forgot Hinata's title of Big Eater. Hinata, hold on, I'm going to start cooking now. Feng teleported directly to the kitchen and used the shadow clone technique to perform all steps of washing vegetables and cooking in the same thread. Hyuga Hanabi thought for a long time and didn't know what he could do. Anxiously, she scratched her face and pouted her mouth. Suddenly her eyes flashed. I'm going to get bread for my sister. Hinata, who had her face covered, realized that the clothes she was wearing before she fell into coma had changed. At this time, she was only wearing thin solid-color long sleeves and a pair of slightly loose shorts. Could these be Feng's clothes? The little face hidden under the quilt became even more rosy, and her head didn't dare to poke out of the quilt. Sister, I got the bread and I'll tear it up for you to eat. Hyuga Hanabi tore open the package and used enough strength to tear off a small piece of bread. How can I swallow such a hard sister? She looked at the hard bread in her hand depressedly. Hearing Hanabi's voice, Hinata slowly poked her head out and saw that Feng was not around, so she blushed and asked in a low voice, Hanabi, did you change my clothes for your sister? No, Hyuga Hanabi shook his head without hesitation. Hinata's face was red and her heartbeat was beating fast like a deer. That is to say, her little face became increasingly red and steaming. The next second, Hinata fainted out of embarrassment. Sister. Seeing this, Hyuga Hanabi quickly shouted, red-haired bad guy. Come on. My sister seems to be starving to death. What? Fire style great fireball technique. Feng immediately used fire style to add another fire and stir-fry shredded green pepper and pork. You pig, why are you so thick-skinned and thick-skinned? Come and cook it for me. In a moment, bursts of fragrance filled the entire mansion. Sniff. Hinata woke up instantly when she smelled the fragrance spreading around, her eyes shining with the desire for food. Sister is resurrected. Not long after, all the food was destroyed under Hinata's extra-dimensional pocket. Even so, there is still no sign of bulging at all. Weird, so weird. Feng stared at Hinata's belly, feeling deeply puzzled. Is there anything else? Hinata lowered her head and looked at Feng expectantly. There are some others, I'll get them for you. Feng turned and walked to the kitchen, and soon came out with a small dinner plate with an oversized cinnamon roll placed on it. The cinnamon rolls are garnished with anko sand, which looks very, very sweet. Hinata pursed her lips after seeing it. Fungin carefully picked up the cinnamon roll and brought it to Hinata's mouth. It's sweet, I don't know if you are used to it. Hinata opened her small mouth and took a bite of cinnamon rolls and anko sand. The anko sand melted in her mouth. The sweet anko sand and the mellow aroma of cinnamon roll filled her taste buds. I'm used to it. I usually like sweet food too. She nodded quickly while feeling the delicious taste, her cheeks bulging as she chewed. Gulu. After smelling the sweet taste of anko sand and seeing the crumbs of pancake scattered on the plate after her sister took a bite, Hyuga Hanabi's throat moved up and down, obviously swallowing. Her little mouth opened slightly and she made a glutinous salivating sound, but she chose to hold back and did not speak. Noticing Hyuga Hanabi's salivating eyes, Hinata handed the cinnamon roll that had been chewed a few times and stood in front of Hanabi, who could barely show her head in front of the bed. Hanabi stretched out his little hand, then retracted it and shook his head. Sister, eat, I've had dinner. Hyuga Hanabi knew that her sister must be very hungry after not eating for 2 days and 1 night, but he was just greedy, so he held it back. Yeah, Hinata responded softly. Then he shyly handed the cinnamon roll to Feng An's mouth. Seeing Hinata's blushing face and Hyuga Hanabi's eyebrows taut looking up, Feng An looked sideways and took the cinnamon roll from Hinata's hand. Looking at the traces of Hinata's bites on it, Feng An didn't know why, but his heart beat faster. Am I actually sinking too? Feng An punched himself in the chest and stuffed the cinnamon roll into his mouth. Huh, no, you really eat it. Hyuga Hanabi raised his head and pouted his mouth to express dissatisfaction. I couldn't hold back my food. Such a big man is not sensible at all. Single quote. As she said this, she pursed her lips in frustration. Feng An's mouth was full and he had no time to talk to her. Quickly go to the kitchen to drink some milk and squeeze it. Gudong, gudong. After drinking it down, Feng An took another small plate from the kitchen. There are 2 cannoli rolls on top. And 2 others. Feng An held the milk package in one hand and drank while passing it to Hinata. What he remembers is that Hinata likes sweets, but he is not sure, so he first used a cinnamon roll to open the way, which worked well, and then took it out. Otherwise, if he doesn't like eating it, he will cook 3 of them at once, fearing that Hinata will take care of his results and force himself to eat the taste he doesn't like. Hinata took it carefully and gave one to Hyuga Hanabi. Seeing that there were 2 of them, Hyuga Hanabi hesitated for a while, but finally took them and ate the cannoli with a smile. You were talking about me just now, but am I still the same? Single quote. Feng An glanced at her and sat on the chair next to her. He drank milk quietly, while Hinata and Hanabi ate cannoli in silence. After a while, there were several sucking sounds. It's Hyuga Hanabi sucking cream from her fingers. She noticed Feng An's disdainful eyes. She snorted, turned her head to the side and continued to suck. After eating a little full, Hinata opened the quilt, revealing her white and small bare feet and landed on the floor. Then she stood on tiptoe and carefully picked up 2 small dinner plates. Seeing her actions, Feng An understood what she wanted to do. He curled his lips and said with a smile, do you have the strength to wash it? Hinata looked at Feng An with her big clear eyes and replied, yes. Then she walked quietly towards the kitchen. After Feng An finished drinking the milk, he also stepped into the kitchen. The 2 of them washed the dishes and cleaned up together, which was even more efficient. Feng An, hearing Hinata call his name, Feng An turned his head and looked. Why did your house suddenly become so big? And the style is quite different from other houses in the village. This, I designed it myself. Hinata admired. Okay, so awesome. I feel like Feng An is so strong in every aspect. Little Hinata has made great progress. Now she won't be so nervous that she can't speak when she praises others, Feng An said with a chuckle. I don't know what's going on. It seems that as long as I face Feng An, I won't be so nervous. Hinata finished speaking quietly and raised her beautiful eyes to look at Feng An. Feeling the gaze, Feng An looked sideways, and the 2 of them looked at each other. This time Hinata did not avert her gaze, but her heartbeat accelerated slightly, her face was slightly red, her hands were slightly sweaty, and her breathing was slightly urgent. In fact, she was still super nervous, but it was much better than before. Feng An carefully closed the kitchen door. Their faces were getting closer and closer, so close that they could feel each other's breathing. At this moment, Fungin suddenly felt a gust of wind blowing behind him and turned back instantly. After looking around, Fungin breathed a sigh of relief when he didn't see the man in sunglasses sticking out. Fungin's sudden movement made Hinata's tense body relax a bit. Then Fungin checked all the kitchen curtains and door locks to make sure they wouldn't be interrupted by a sudden head. Then he held Hinata's little hand again and gradually got closer to each other. When their noses touched, the blush on Hinata's face had already climbed to her neck. At this time, her heart was in her throat, and her eyes began to wander again. Thump, thump, in the confined space, her rapid heartbeat could be clearly heard. Well, I'm so nervous. Woo-woo, I just promised that I won't be nervous. Hinata whispered in panic. Fungin felt her nervousness from the sweat overflowing from her little hands. In fact, he was not nervous, but he couldn't show it. Otherwise, if both of them were nervous, how could they continue? Fungin pursed her dry lips and said in a hoarse voice, I'm here. Hinata snorted slightly. The two turned their heads slightly, their mouths opened slightly and gradually shortened by millimeters. As the two of them pressed together, a large amount of white smoke suddenly erupted from Hinata's head, and her body temperature rose rapidly. Fungin felt the warmth coming from him and raised his eyes to glance at Hinata. Then he saw her eyes trembled slightly, covered with a thin layer of mist, and filled with tears. The charming appearance made Fungin tremble in his heart. This is a foul. Single quote. The two of them were intimate and let time pass. At this time, in the living room, there was a sneaky little girl staring at the two people in the kitchen with her eyes open. 10 minutes later, the two walked out of the kitchen holding hands. At this time, Hinata's face was as red as ever with his head lowered, and one corner of Fungin's mouth was also raised crazily. It was impossible to describe accurately how he was pressing AK. He was just like pressing bullet, and he couldn't hold it down at all. Then, the two noticed Hyuga Hanabi, who was curled up in a chair, rubbing his eyes with his small hands. After the two approached, Hinata leaned down and asked softly, Hanabi, are you sleepy? Hyuga Hanabi did not respond, but continued to rub his eyes while trembling slightly. The slight sobs sounded particularly clear in the quiet and empty house. Hinata looked closely and found that her eyes were red and there were a few crystal clear tears rolling down from her little hands. Hanabi is crying. Hinata's heart ached for a moment, and she squatted in front of her, helping her wipe away the tears on her face with both hands, and asked gently, what happened? Did you hit it somewhere? Hearing her sister's question, Hyuga Hanabi couldn't stop sobbing even more, and more tears welled up in her red eyes. She sobbed and shook her head. No, no. Then tell me, sister, why is Hanabi crying? Hinata asked in as relaxed a tone as possible. Fungin on the side saw Hyuga Hanabi crying and was a little at a loss, scratching his face and head for a while. He's really not good at dealing with this kind of thing. I'll get you a glass of milk. After saying that, Fungin went away, opened the refrigerator and took out 2 bags of hard-packed milk and put them in a hot water bottle to heat. At the same time, a certain amount of space is left for the two sisters. Because, woo, Hyuga Hanabi kept sobbing. When she saw her sister and Fungin making love in the kitchen, she felt an inexplicable grievance welling up, and now she didn't know how to speak. She didn't know how to describe the discomfort and unhappiness she felt. It's okay, sister won't ask any more. Hinata hugged Hyuga Hanabi and let her lean on her shoulder. The two sisters cuddled together for who knows how long. When Hinata's solid-colored long sleeves soaked a large area, Hanabi's mood gradually returned to calm, and there was no longer any obvious sobbing. Gurgling. The hot water kettle buzzed and the water boiled. Fungin quickly opened the lid of the hot water bottle and used chopsticks to take out the milk one by one. After wiping the water off the package with a towel, he gave it to Hinata and Hanabi. Here, Fungin handed a package to Hinata and Hanabi respectively. Hinata nodded and took it, while Hanabi pouted, glanced at Fungin with tearful eyes, and then turned away. Fungin scratched his head, wondering what happened to this little kid suddenly. Hinata, who was sitting on the bed, seemed to notice something. She reached out and took another pack of milk, winked at Fungin and said, go and rest first. Okay. Fungin seemed to understand the meaning of her wink, but seemed not to understand, and obediently went back upstairs to rest. After he left, only Hinata and Hanabi were left in the living room. Hinata pushed the milk into Hanabi's little hand. This time Hanabi took it and felt the warm milk in her hand. Hanabi remembered her attitude towards Fungin just now and hung her head guiltily. Hinata unscrewed the cap of the milk bottle and took a sip. Then Hanabi slowly opened it and took a sip. Slightly. As soon as the milk entered her mouth, there was a hot feeling on her tongue. The stinging sensation forced her to close one eye tightly, hurriedly opened her mouth and stuck out her little tongue. After contacting the air, the hot stinging sensation gradually dissipated. Seeing Hanabi's sudden movement, Hinata was startled at first, and then saw that Hanabi was fine. She slightly curved her lips and smiled softly. Humph, Oni-chan is laughing at me, Hyuga Hanabi said with a nasal sound that had just finished crying. Hinata smiled lightly and said, Fungin has left. Can you tell me why you were crying just now? Well, Hyuga Hanabi nodded and said, just now. I was curious why my sister and Hongmao didn't come out for so long, so. Having said this, Hanabi paused and lowered his eyes. So I rolled my eyes and wanted to see what you were doing. Ah, Hinata quickly covered her mouth with both hands, a trace of shyness on her fair and delicate face. Then I felt very uncomfortable. I wanted to stop, but the tears kept coming out on their own without listening to my words. I read in the book that after my sister sticks with other boys, she will leave later. Hinata wiped the tears from Hanabi's eyes. No. Then I want to sleep with my sister. Okay. Hinata and Hanabi got into the small futon together. Fortunately, they were both relatively petite and would not fall under the bed. Hee. Hyuga Hanabi bared his teeth and smiled at Hinata. Then he closed his eyes and fell asleep peacefully. Did I misunderstand what Hinata meant by blinking? Fungin, who was lying on the bed after taking a shower on the second floor, looked at the ceiling and muttered to himself. The next day, Hinata slowly opened her sleepy eyes when she smelled the aroma of food. She sat up and rubbed it, then saw someone cooking in the kitchen. Is Maple safe? Wake up so early. Suddenly she felt something was not right. He frowned again and glanced a few times. I found that it was not Fung An's body shape at all, it was clearly Hyuga Shaw's body shape. Sister Shaw, Hinata muttered subconsciously. Hearing Hinata's murmur, Hyuga Hanabi, who was sleeping next to her with a leg draped over Hinata, also woke up. She yawned loudly. Is dinner ready? Hinata asked. Hanabi, why is Sister Shaw here? Oh, yes, it was too late last night and I didn't tell my sister. Sister Shaw came to help her since she was in a coma. Oh, Hinata's eyes dimmed a bit. So, the clothes I'm wearing were changed by Sister Shaw for me. Yeah, why does it sound like my sister is a little depressed? Hyuga Hanabi tilted his head and looked at his sister. No. Hinata opened the quilt and stood up, went to the bathroom and washed herself briefly to refresh herself from her dazed state. After preparing the meal, Hyuga Shaw noticed Hinata's figure and looked slightly happy. Hinata-sama, are you awake? Well, I'm causing trouble for you. Hyuga Shaw nodded politely. No, whether it is taking care of Master Sparks or Master Hinata, it is what I should do. Then Fungin, who had dark circles under his eyes, came down from upstairs to wash up, and the four of them sat around the dining table. Fungin suddenly felt that something was missing. Oh, Lao Dang isn't here. Single quote. I'll go get my uncle. Fungin stood up, closed his eyes, opened them, and appeared at Hyuga's mansion. Uncle, Hinata is awake. Base. Hyuga Hiyashi, who was in the back room, flew out. Okay, take me there quickly. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.